one. It's good to see you.
You too.
Cheers. Thank you for the beer.
Of course.
I cannot tell you the last time that I've had fucking Modelo.
What?
I love
I had
it.
one yesterday.
I put myself to sleep drinking whiskey. That was my night last night. Yeah.
Classic.
And this is a surprise to you because of the neighborhood we're in. There are Modelo cans up and down the fucking street.
I felt right at home. Don't worry.
Well, because like, God, man, like, don't get me wrong. Like, I like the place I'm at. I'm very thankful to be here, especially because like the circumstances that led me to live here is very like spur of the moment. Went to because 3 of my other friends live here.
Nice.
And
well, that's fun.
yeah, it's cool because these are guys I've known for over a decade.
Nice.
And so
you got a lot of dirt on each other.
Yeah. They love me. I love them. And we have so much shit. But yeah, so so I hit them up and I was like, hey, I'm in a time of crisis. I need somewhere to live. And they're like, okay, sounds good. We have a spare room. And but I don't even say weekend because it starts on Wednesdays. Like it'll start tonight at 10 and it goes until Monday morning at like 4. The neighbors blast the fucking music and they just party.
Is it bad music? Well, I mean, do you like it?
It's like,
I mean, it could be good, could be bad.
Well, it's like, you know, if you can't beat them, join them.
That's what I'm saying. Have you tried to go get a plate?
Because they, well, I wish it was like that, but they just sit in their garage and I respect it. Because like I'll leave, because I used to like get up really early in the morning, go to the gym. And so I'd leave at like 5 a.m. and I'd see them getting into their work trucks and going to their jobs. Mm-hmm. I'm like, okay, I respect it, right? Because you guys, all you do is they sit around on the weekends in their garage and drink beer.
Well,
and it's like, all right, fair.
It's a tough job.
If you're working fucking 12 hours a day, respect. Yeah, it's cool to have you here. And it was quick shout out to Leroy and the rest of the slums because they're the reason that we met. And
yeah, true.
Yeah, very good guys. And
I hate that guy.
He had nothing but amazing to say about you.
Aww. No, he's a little cutie. He's a little sweet boy.
Yeah, he is. I'm telling you, like, I don't know if he wants me to like say this or not on camera.
Do it.
But because I went to one of his shows and they're like, hey, you should fucking come over after, we'll party, da da da. And I think it's the same night that you'd went to. And so I'm
like, was I there?
Yeah.
I might have been there.
Yeah, I think so. And driving over, I'm like 5 minutes away from the house, and I get a text, man, I fucking love you. You're the shit. I'm so glad that we're friends. You're, like, oh, thanks, buddy.
Leroy. That's sweet. He gets very emotional when he's under
the
alcohol.
Influence. I want to like get into you, like your interest in music and all and stuff we've talked about personally, but like I kind of want to get into like a bit of like your childhood a little bit because you're from Mexico, right?
Yes.
That's cool. So when did you come to the States?
We came when I was close to turning 7.
Wow.
Yeah. So I was born there and had a lot of my childhood there. I guess most of what I consider like my childhood years. I think the years that I was in Mexico is when I was like allowed to be a kid, Yeah. And just like enjoy life in like a kid way or whatever, given the circumstances. But
what part of Mexico?
We were in Juarez.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
Oh, so you're right on the fucking border, right?
Yeah, okay. And it was crazy. I remember the first time we drove back, looking over to Juarez and then seeing like, the shacks and stuff, and then we're on like the nice highway in El Paso and shit, and it's just like, damn, your luck was so bad. Geography just had you be born like some 100 feet to the side.
So it's funny you say that because I spent a lot of my childhood in El Paso because my grandparents, when I was young, like literally until I was like maybe like 18 or 19, they lived down there. And then as my grandfather got older, they moved back to Alabama. And I remember growing up there and like my grandmother, I feel like a lot of other grandmothers, a shopaholic in her old age. And
mine would just give my stuff away to my cousins in Mexico. So that was fun.
And she would like go down to like the markets in El Paso and buy from them because like really like she'll have like colorful shit, right? So she could buy all that. But then what would trip me out was exactly what you just said, driving along the highway. And then literally just, and there's people that haven't been to El Paso that don't believe me.
Yeah.
Or you look over the wall.
Developer. wraps.
Yeah.
I'm like,
You look over the wall and it's just fucking poverty.
yeah,
Like it's something out of a movie.
like third world type.
Yeah,
shit,
like you see the kids kicking around the soccer
Yeah.
ball from the 60s, and you see just like, to call them shacks is almost like an upgrade. 'Cause it's just sheet
Honestly,
metal. It's
yeah.
like sheet metal that they stapled together.
Yeah, it's like the wah, 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 wah sound.
Yeah.
You know? I don't know what material that is.
Yeah. No, exactly.
But that one.
It's like fucking plexiglass.
Yeah.
I'm proud to announce that the podcast is now officially sponsored by the fine people over at Chop Chili Company. Guys, this is some of the best chili you can get here in the state of New Mexico, and they are online as well as in stores. They can be found at Smith's, Albertsons, Sprouts, John Brooks, and Lowe's Corner Market. They have 3 amazing flavors that you see here, and they also have frozen green chili that you can get online. Go on over to the website, chopchilico.com, and get yourself some amazing chili today. But
Fucked.
it's it's fucked. Like it's you can spin it and make it funny, but it's kind of fucked. And it's like your luck of the draw was geographical.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's interesting. It's funny you bring that up, 'cause the first thing that came to my mind was seeing that. Growing up, did you ever have that moment where you're looking over the wall or looking over the border and you're like
in Mexico?
Yeah.
Honestly, no, because it wasn't.
So where did you live in?
I wasn't aware.
Oh, okay.
Fuck, where did I could not point it out to you. Genuinely, it's a big city.
Yeah.
I don't know, but in a way, it's, I don't know, all kind of pretty together, like compact, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But I just wasn't really aware of all of those sort of like tensions, those like political tensions or anything like that. My parents never painted it to me that I was having like a bad life.
That's awesome.
Which I'm very
good
happy
for them.
about,
Yeah, good for them.
And yeah, it was really great. And we had it a lot better than a lot of other people. My dad's jobs pay comparatively to here was obviously shit, but over there comparatively to other people, it was a lot better. So we were very lucky, family of 3 and stuff, but it's still a house for a family of 5, I guess 3 kids. Was still pretty small.
Yeah.
Definitely smaller than this, for sure, by at least half.
Wow.
So it's wealth comparatively.
Yeah.
I shared a room with my siblings up until I was like in middle school or something like that, just out of, necessity and whatever.
Yeah.
But I guess I wasn't ever aware about it. My parents actually didn't tell me when we were moving here, that we were moving here. I didn't know, which is jarring. Like as a child, I just knew that like suddenly I didn't have like my friends, and I don't even remember if I got to say bye to like my childhood friends, So I just remember being there and then not. And we moved around a lot, even when we were in Mexico, but when we moved to the States, we also moved around a lot to try to figure out different states, different parts of the city, what can we afford, family, where can we stay, etc. But when it kind of hit that we were like here for good and like I wasn't going to be able to go back, I just remember crying like every night. And I think my parents were just this, they didn't need the like salt on the wound of having left their whole life. But I was a child. I had no idea what was going on. So they were just like very frustrated with me at like not coping better. But I don't know if it would have been better or worse to know that it was happening.
Yeah.
Honestly, I don't know. I was a kid, so I don't remember, but that was jarring for sure.
Well, and this is a bit of a weird question because I'm thinking a little bit back to when I was that age. Mm-hmm. I remember, and funny enough, it's a kid that was from Mexico. Mm-hmm. I remember one childhood friend's name from back then.
Yeah.
Because there's like, God, going back to elementary school, there's one person that I still know, and the only reason her and I are still in contact is because our moms were friends outside of the school. So it was kind of like this continuing like friendship that kind of just like weaved in and out.
Yeah.
But I think back to that time and I can't remember anyone's fucking name. No. So it was a bit of a weird question. Have you ever tried or been able to reconnect with anyone from that time in your life? Or is that kind of just like lost to memory?
No, I actually have, but that I recall, not to like my closest friends that I had like
I'm gonna
in
check the
school.
cameras, but just continue.
Yeah, no. Not to my closest friends that I had in school, but to some neighbors or like people from church back then. I've been like, they have either found me on Facebook, because I don't know, Facebook just seems a lot bigger than like Instagram or anything else in Mexico. But they have been able to find me through my parents' Facebook and like all of that, all of those things.
That's awesome.
So that's been super weird. It's always like a blast from the past. I'm like, oh my God, it was a whole other life, you know, and to see everyone and just the trajectories of it. And I am always curious to see what my life would be like if I had ended up growing up there.
Are they still down in Juarez, or have they? Oh,
yeah,
no
most
shit.
of them are still over there. Yeah, I've had some who move over here, but not many. All my family is over there as well, so that was difficult because we were like over at grandma's house like all the time.
Yeah.
I was with my cousins all the time. Like we had crazy shenanigans that like little crazy kids would do, and I missed that a lot. Suddenly I was like alone, and everyone in the family was in a weird spot, so we all were like very isolated, even though we were like the only thing we had like throughout all these moving situations. But it was strange.
Yeah.
It was strange.
Did you immediately go to New Mexico, or did your family, like you said, you moved around a lot? What did that look like?
So I guess while we were in Mexico, I don't remember a lot of it because I guess I do kind of remember a little bit now that I think about it. I remember a playground in an apartment complex here in town that we moved to when I was maybe like 4. So I think they've tried to move here a few times. And then in Mexico, I remember moving houses maybe just like once, I think. But it was mostly when we moved here. We were in Texas for a bit. We were in New Mexico for a bit. We were in Colorado for a bit. Denver was my favorite. It was just fun.
Yeah.
And it was cool.
What year did you first, I meant to ask this earlier, what year did you first move?
2003.
2003.
August.
Okay, interesting. I just asked because it's interesting if this were happening before or after 9/11, because obviously the immigration policy here fucking exploded.
Yeah.
So
it was also interesting when I have like American friends who were like, "Where were you during 9/11?" I'm like, I don't know. I think like in the playground. Like I remember learning about 9/11.
I was in Mexico, bro.
Yeah, I was like fighting some wild dog. I don't know, but you know, I was trying to survive out there.
Jesus Christ.
But I just wasn't sure. I'm like, I don't know. I did learn about it and learned that it was like terrible.
A thing, right?
Yeah, but it didn't like hit me. Like if I would have been here,
well, because you weren't. Sure. Yeah, you weren't here in the States. Yeah,
I had like no ties really.
Well, yeah, no one would expect you to. Yeah.
I was a child.
So you move 2003, and how old were you when you made it to Denver?
I think I was still either 6 or 7.
How long were you there for?
Oh, I don't know. Part of me wants to say not really. Honestly, like there's blocks of my childhood that I don't remember. There's like Keystone events and like all those things, but I don't remember. It feels like we weren't there for very long, but I went to school.
What made that like stand out to you? You know that as your favorite. So.
Yeah. I don't know what it was. It just felt different. I think it was one of the first places where people just seemed nicer. I think to like our family, people were just a little bit nicer. And I remember being at a Walmart with my family. I saw like the Broncos logo, and I was like, I like that horse. I like this place. And I will still like rep the Broncos. Really, just for
the
that
simplicity
reason.
Of childhood.
I know.
Oh, I
miss
it.
Too.
Oh God, I know. So I grew up a Broncos fan. Like I don't give a fuck about football these days, but like I grew up a Broncos fan.
Your team blows.
Yeah, and there was like this 2-year period, and anyone who listens to this podcast knows that I don't know sports for anything. But what I do know is that there was this 2-year period where Peyton Manning was the quarterback, and they went to Super Bowls, and it was great, and then it just all went back to shit.
Yeah,
I was like, all right, oh well.
I remember that Super Bowl. I remember both those Super Bowls actually. My dad and I were very upset. So I think my dad took advantage that I was the littlest one, and so we would do all of those
manipulated
things.
and molded you
into
into
so
this.
I was the one that would watch sports with my dad and like Rambo and Rocky every time it was on TV.
That's funny.
And like he'd be like, "This is how you change a tire," blah blah blah, which is nice. It's
awesome.
really nice. A lot of people don't get that, you know. And we had I don't know, like a very complicated relationship. But at least there was those moments.
Yeah.
Which is nice.
So what landed you here in Albuquerque?
Funnily enough, my mom left our entire fate up to God and deer. And I was like, woman, why? Because she told me the story later on. And she was like, yeah, we were like driving around in like Aurora or something like that. And then she was like, all right, God, if we're meant to move back to Albuquerque, like show me a deer. And then sure enough, she saw like a deer. And so we moved.
See, I'm a Christian, but even that makes me go, you could have just as well been like, hey, if we're going to Albuquerque, show me a tree.
Also,
and
we're right,
trees.
because I'm like, we're in the mountain area. But I didn't quite know this.
Yeah.
But I guess she's made a lot of her life decisions based off of whether she sees a deer. Which I'm sure I could turn into like some spiritual thing, but it just feels reckless.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with no shade towards
But
your
we're
mother, but I
here
have to
now,
agree
you
with
know,
that.
so it all worked out.
How old were you when your family finally settled here?
Define settled.
Like stayed for a longer period of time, longish.
Well, I think we settled in Albuquerque. And oh God, I don't know exactly because we moved in like 2003. We were bopping around for a while, and then so I don't know, maybe 2004.
Interesting.
We moved back here, but we also moved around a lot here.
Yeah.
So that was interesting. Got to know a lot of different parts of the hood real well. So that was fun. A lot of 911 calls as a kid. That's cool.
I feel that.
Yeah. So, don't worry about the neighborhood. Modelo cans, comfortable.
And so growing up was music a part of your life? Was that something you found out about? And like not found out about, but like something that not that they don't have music in Mexico, but like something that you took an interest in later in life? Or
no, it's kind of always been a part of my life. All of my cousins and I remember shenanigans over there, and they were all really big into music. And I also come from like an overly religious family, and so we were always at church, and a lot of my cousins got to playing for the church, and so I was always around music. I just never I've always wanted to sing, and I always like thought of like little performances in my head when I was like doing songs or whatever in my room, but it just always seemed like it was not where I should be focusing. I was very aware of like financial issues as a kid, and I was very aware of like just survival, really. So it didn't feel like pipe dreams was like what I should have gone for. And my parents never gave me that message either. My mom was always like, chase what you want. Like we will support you. So it was just like I saw that we need like money. So I was like, all right, I need to go like be an astronaut or like a vet or like something. So I always had music as like in terms of me doing it, I've always wanted to, but it didn't seem as possible until I got older. But I had like due to like a lot of circumstances like a very lonely childhood, and what I had really was music and art, and I was able to pass the time by listening to music and drawing and just doing that for hours on end. I wasn't allowed to do much else. And so art and music to me is my own self-expression, and because I always felt very isolated, I want to make stuff that like the right people find and I feel like understood and they feel understood, because that song you listen to that feels it's like just for you and it's your situation perfectly, and you're like, holy shit, someone else like knows the feeling. I've had so many of those songs in my life and so many artists who've like done so much, that it'd be cool that if I could be able to like find connection through like artistic self-expression, because that's all I've had. It's just like music and art. So it'd be nice for people to happen. No,
that makes perfect sense. If you want me asking, feeling isolated as a kid, that's not exactly, unfortunately, it's not exactly a unique experience. But what makes yours more unique than others is the fact that, you grew up in a country that was not, you weren't native to that country.
Yeah.
Was a lot of that loneliness, the isolation part of it, was that because you came from a different country? Was like, did you have to deal with a language barrier? Did you?
For sure. It was a huge part of it, definitely. And I think because I was younger, I was able to pick up English within maybe like 2 years of being here, or 3, enough, But it was difficult at first. I didn't understand like the othering that we would get from people around us. Because I was just like, I was literally born like this close to whatever barrier this is. I didn't become aware of that barrier until we moved here, really, and realized how different I was from other people, how many people I couldn't communicate with, how different I looked from people on TV, and like all of these things. And there was that. And then there was also like my parents were so religious. I think moving here, the only solace they sort of had was religion. And I was in church for maybe like 5 days a week, sometimes 6, sometimes every day. So I was there a lot. If it got to like a very culty situation, there was like almost like a commune involved. Genuinely, it was crazy. Yeah. And it was, the thing where like the tithe was really going for like the pastor's trip to Brazil or whatever, but we're all going to go into this commune or whatever. So I was already like isolated because I couldn't speak the language. I was isolated because all I ever talked about outside of that was religion with either my family or kids my age at church. And I didn't know how to socialize. I had like nothing in common with other kids. So I had no idea how to make those connections. And I didn't learn how to until like very later on in life.
Yeah.
So all of that led me to having like a very isolating childhood. And my siblings and I were all going through it in all very different ways. So were my parents. So we didn't like go to each other for those problems. Like it was really the opposite. Like it took me going to therapy for so long and becoming like the black sheep of the family, the one that like brings up the problems for us to actually like work on them. And that was like in college, that was semi recently. So it was hard.
Well, that's crazy that, because you would think, because I'm assuming you grew up Catholic. Christian, even in Mexico, Christian.
Yeah. So Mexico doesn't, as far as I know, doesn't have like the denominations that they have here. It's like you're either Catholic and believe in like saints and the Virgin, or you're Christian and believe in like
God exactly. It's one or the other.
Yeah. But I think in terms of like the U.S., it would be like Pentecostal types, like those super extreme ones that like speak in tongues and people are passing out and like all that shit. Like
you ran into that?
I was there 5 to 7 days a week.
Oh, so
I wasn't kidding when I said it was culty.
Oh, so you straight up dealt with like the holy rollers and the thing, but then dealing with the people that are speaking, they think they're speaking in tongues and they're doing the whole like.
Yeah.
My favorite video is from a black church in the South where the pastor's like yelling in the microphone and he brings out this dude. The dude's like, "I'm not gay anymore. I love women.
I don't like men's anymore." And I'm like,
women. So it's like shit like that is what you ran into.
Yeah, pretty much. And it was like, you can pray the gay away. And that did a whole number on me, which was so terrible and like just damaging in so many ways. It was just like to the point where like mental illness was like demons, schizophrenia is demonic,
right? Well, because that's how some demons are described in the Bible,
right?
It's shown as like today people would translate that as schizophrenia. When again, if you're taking the Bible at face value, no, the person was actually possessed by a demon. Not to say schizophrenia didn't exist back then, who's to say? But no, in that case, it's a demon. In this case, it's mental illness.
Yeah.
And it's sad. Like, it's sad that people don't have you don't have to, I don't think you have to be Christian to make that distinction. I don't think you have to be. I think you just have to have a little bit of common sense.
Yeah.
Like, if you're just taking everything at face value and don't assume they're lying, just say, yeah, that's a demon. This is fucking mental illness. Yeah. And it's sad that, like, because you're not the only person that I've spoken to, both on and off, that has expressed like how, not to overuse the word, but how demonizing the Christian faith has been to them, how manipulating it has been, and how like like forming in the worst of ways. Because like I had
religious trauma is a very real thing.
It's a very real thing. Because like for me, I just know that growing up, like I went to a pretty standard church. Like I bounced really between like I was at Sagebrush and it's like it's like infancy. Like it wasn't even Sagebrush yet.
Yeah. And
then at Calvary as well. And you know, my mother still is a religious nut.
Yeah.
Like I'm all for Christianity, but she takes it to like the upteenth degree to the point where it's discriminatory.
Right.
Towards her own family.
Right.
That are also Christian.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Oh, I know. Yeah.
And so I had to like find my own way back and figure out like, okay, well, what is this? Not to say how does this mold to what I want out of life, but like, no, what does this actually mean? What does it like? How do I find my place in it, and so on and so forth? But a lot of people don't do that. In your experience dealing with stuff like that, how are you digesting it now? Like
digesting what specifically religion?
Like because you bring up like religious trauma, you bring up like all the stupidity that you've had to put up with. Like, have you ever felt the urge to go back, maybe figure out what not even just Christianity, but just spirituality or what a religion could mean to you, could be for you? Or is it just like, you know what? That's a hassle and there's enough going on. Because I know a lot of people like that. And I'm like, honestly, that's not who I am, but I don't blame you. I got to be honest. I don't. And I blame a lot of that to like mega churches, which I hate with a passion. I know them very well. So. Yeah. And I feel hypocritical saying that because I love Calvary and I love Skip, the pastor there, because I think because like every time, because I love Skip because when he's preaching, it's I feel like I'm in a class. Like I don't want to go to church to get the like. I mean, I describe it as like the TikTok pastor.
Oh yeah.
Where it's like the Lord will save you. Trust in Jesus. Like that's all great, but I don't want to ever go to church and think like I could give the message. Because I'm so uneducated compared to what someone like that should be. And so when I go see Skip, it's like I've stopped going to church altogether. I went a little bit of period between like August and like January, February of this year where I was going regularly. But Skip would kind of step out and his son would preach. And his son's very much like TikTok type pastor. I can't do this. I cannot do this. So I listen to, every now and again, I listen to Skip because he just records his sermons and puts it out as a podcast. And that's what works for me because like I feel like I'm learning something, but the vast majority is not that.
Right.
It's fear mongering and fear porn, and it's only displaying like the sound bites.
Yeah.
Where do you find yourself now?
Well,
doing with all that.
I've always been like a questioner. I've always been very skeptical. As anything, even when it didn't feel like a choice to be. But I think now most of my fascination in terms of anything spiritual and whatever is like an afterlife, like most people. But I've been like very aware and conscious of death since I was very little, and I've always just been curious. I mean, hey, some people go through it, but since I was very little, so I was curious, and it felt really nice as a kid because at first it was like there's like a being that loves you just for being alive and shit, and like if you were the only person in the world, he still would have died for you and like all that, and I'm like, cool, that sounds dope. And then as I grew up, it just turned into just rules and fear and like you can't do this and you can't do that and you can't do this and you can't do that, but you can only do this if you do it like that and all of these other things. And I was like, fuck, like what is going on? And it was just so restricting and so limited. And something that bugged me was just like the music sucked. Like
yes,
I'm sorry.
No, yes, that was the beginning.
Fun.
That was the beginning of me turning away from church because my parents, they're not the best people on the planet. Certainly not my father, But when I was very young, my father introduced me to like Black Sabbath,
Nice.
Guns N' Roses, Eric Clapton, very like classic rock that set the foundation for some like the death metal you see around here.
Right.
But you know, so when my parents split, the short time that I had with my dad, I would be listening to like old school heavy metal. I'm like, yeah, that fucks. Like, that's
like,
awesome. Right? But then when I'm with my mom, again, hyper religious. Fucking, I could not put a song on I didn't have an iPod yet. I had a little MP3 player. I couldn't put a song on my MP3 player, or I couldn't buy a CD or have a CD unless she looked up every song and went through all the lyrics and like dissected it and this, that, and the other. And then we would go to church and she would like force me to fucking sing. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah,
like sing, fucking sing. Yeah. And I'm standing in the, not even pews, like the fucking rows of, at that point, it was like little
folding chairs.
Yeah, fold out chairs we had. And I felt so uncomfortable. And I'm like,
this doesn't feel authentic to who I am.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm like, exactly. It's not authentic. And then I remember standing there being like, I mean, I love Jesus, but I don't like the music he's got for us.
Yeah, like, surely.
Can we do better?
Surely. The God who invented the didgeridoo's got something more interesting than this, you know? It was tough, and it was all of that. That was like a big thing where I'm like, I can't even be in here for like entertainment, you know, just like recreationally. It was hard to like do churchy stuff outside of church. It was hard to want to. Yeah. It was hard to go to church. It was getting to a point where like it was so instilled to me that like suicide was wrong. If you kill yourself, you're going to hell. Like being gay is wrong. You can pray to get away.
Which is like
yeah.
I hate this because I'm a dork. Obviously, I love like comics and shit. So I hate to say canonically, but like canonically to the Bible, in the lore of the Bible, suicide is not something that'll send you to hell. And it's something that is...
Shout out to the Pentecostals, man.
That is like hammered into people.
Yeah. Because how dare you play God? He gave you life.
Well, exactly. And I would never advocate for suicide, fucking obviously. Obviously. I said that, and I heard that coming out, and then I saw a vision of myself in 10 years dealing with this clip, and like, oh,
you're like, oh God.
So
cancel culture.
I'm preventing that timeline. But no, it's
kill yourself, guys.
Yeah, right. It's the only non-forgivable sin in the Bible is like I forget how it's phrased, but it's thoroughly denouncing God. Like to the point where you believe it in your heart, like there's no God, there's no, like that's the only thing according to the Bible. Right. So I agree, like growing up when you get told, if you like it's this horrible thing for suicide, for being gay, premarital sex, drugs, all this stuff. And the drugs thing is what cracked me up because as I grow up and I'm start studying, I'm learning more about that time. More than likely, Moses was high on DMT during the burning bush incident.
Jesus was such a stoner. He was so chill. No way.
Yeah. So it's interesting how like all of that is like I hate to say brainwashing, but it's brainwashing when you're a kid.
It really is. I fully feel like I got like constant messaging all the time from like every adult figure and book and everything I had in my life all the time. And it was also that I just got tired of everyone else telling me what I'm supposed to think and how I'm supposed to be and how I can and can't be. And because it was so like, one of the biggest ones too is like the whole gay thing, like if you're gay and you don't pray it away, you're gonna go to hell. Sorry, it's just immoral. And I was just like losing my little like fourth grade mind at the fact that I liked titties because I saw them on TV and I was like, holy shit, what do I do? Like I'm such a sinner, I have to pray. And I prayed my little heart out for years, man.
I shouldn't be laughing.
No, please do. No, it makes me feel better.
It's fucking hilarious.
But it's true. I was like, what?
Because
I
I saw the same thing. I saw the same thing, and I thought the same thing. I was like, hey, wait a minute.
Yeah, we're like, wait, what is this feeling?
I'm supposed to like that.
Hold on. And so, yeah, that's always been so crazy. And I would try, just to pray it away for forever. And I knew I liked guys too. So that was like, I was half normal. That's how it felt. I was still kind of forgivable. It's how it felt. That's how it would be phrased, And I would freak out so much because it just like wasn't a thing that was going away. It just wasn't a thing that was going away, no matter how hard I prayed, no matter how hard I genuinely like believed to my core that I could pray it away and like be saved and get to heaven. Like it just was not going to happen. I couldn't get rid of it. And so I was like, okay, I'm not going to believe in something that just doesn't believe in me, that just like handed me a mind that's already dealing with a losing hand. If you build me to like titties, why the fuck are you going to send me to hell for the same reason? You know what? So I'm like, I don't get it was that sort of like breakthrough moment in my mind where I was like, this can't be the way it really is. Like, am I really that fucked? Like, what's the point then? I'm already going to hell about something that I've tried to pray away and couldn't. So what the fuck is the point in even trying anymore? No matter how good of a Christian I'll ever be, I'm going to go to hell. So who cares? And that was sort of like the process.
See, and it's stuff like that that, provided that I'm believing in the right thing, and I go to heaven one day, it's told that you'll have all the knowledge in the world, right? Or like all the knowledge that's available to God you will have because you're in the same place. And that's one of the things I really want to know because humans are so impossibly predictable. Yeah. We're creatures of habit. Yeah. Like we are so predictable. And I look at our government now and then I think about the governments of the biblical times. Yeah. And there are so many similarities. And then people say, oh, yeah, it's like the fall of Rome. And yes, that's very true. But like, look at the people that persecuted and ended up killing Jesus and the disciples. Like a lot of their characteristics exist in our government today and governments around the world. Yeah. So I just got this fucking thing today. So now whenever it vibrates, I like twitch. I'm like, what the fuck? No, it scares me more than anything. I'm like, why is my wrist vibrating? But like, I think about the similarities they have and the corruption and the evil. And I'm like, okay, well, we're told that the Bible is the word of God. Okay, fine. Right. But what if some of it is corrupted? Because I agree. Because that's one of the things that never settled with me, right? Because I'm straight through and through. Like I know that. Like I've been born that way. I've always been that way. I can appreciate a handsome dude, you know what I mean? But like I'm not about to suck his dick. You know what I mean? Like I'm not about that.
You don't feel that in your heart.
No, I really don't. My heart, my mouth, my butt, nothing, right?
Nothing's feeling it.
Yeah. So then but then I think about and I hear like testimonies from gay Christians and growing up, that's what's it called? That's like an oxymoron. Like you can't be
treason. Just kidding. Just kidding. Psych.
Treason. That's funny. I've been looking forward to this. That's funny.
I'm sorry.
That's funny. But no, like that's like an oxymoron. Right. But now as I'm grown up, I'm like, well, that doesn't compute because because I don't think God giving us free will is setting us up for failure. Yeah. Because I think if we didn't have free will, the human experience would be horrible. Yeah. I think it'd be so boring and so bland and just dog shit. But I find it extremely hard to believe that the same God, that a God that has any common sense would inherently build into someone something that is punishable by him. Exactly. You know what I mean? And that's like why I look and that's how I feel. Like, and not that I would ever contest that murder isn't one of the 10 commandments or anything like that, right. But then I think about people that have psychotic breaks or people that are mentally deranged, like from birth. And that's why I personally, like, do I think people are predisposed to have like depression or anxiety, schizophrenia. And I wouldn't say that they're like lesser or like a softer mental illness, because they're not, but like that type of non-violent mental illness, right? Like violence towards others. But I kind of like in the same way as, you know, they're talking about like being born homosexual. Like, I don't think that like people are born like right off the womb ready to kill, right? Because that's a punishable thing. And I find that hard to believe that God would put that in someone. Like, oh, I'm gonna punish you for it. Don't act on it. Don't act on it. Don't act on it. And that's why like I really like listening to people like Ben Shapiro and Matt Walsh, because I agree with a lot of their more conservative views for the most part, except for homosexuality. Except for homosexuality, and that's where they lose me.
Right.
Because it's like,
that's where.
Oh yeah.
That's where.
Honestly, yeah. Because I mean, like, well, that and abortion. Really anything like because I agree with the stuff that they have to say about like fiscal responsibility and like gun rights and stuff like that. But when it comes to like the more personal rights, I don't agree
like
with
opinions and beliefs and shit.
Yeah, I don't agree with a lot of that. Like Matt Walsh had a good debate with Rogan about gay marriage. I don't know if you saw that or not.
I did not.
It's really good. It's like
sounds difficult to watch, but is it not?
No, it's great.
Okay.
It's really good. And the clip itself is like 12, 15 minutes, but the whole segment's like 30 on the episode.
Okay.
Matt Walsh lost, in my opinion. And the only reason he lost is he would not admit that his beliefs came from religion.
Right.
He wouldn't say it.
Yeah.
And because the end of the argument was Rogan basically saying, Walsh said, well, gay marriage dismantles the structure of marriage, the institution of marriage, and it taints it. And then Rogan's response is, how does a gay couple's marriage affect your marriage?
Right.
In any way, shape, or form. And they just kept going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. They couldn't come to an agreement.
That's dinner with my parents. It's very frustrating.
I'll be honest, a part of me commends Walsh for sticking to his belief system, but then you need.
If you're gonna be a shit, stand by it.
Yeah, exactly. But then at the same time, just admit that you're not losing if you admit that it's what you believe in religion-wise, in my opinion. You know what I mean? Like, if you just admit that, hey, this comes from religious bias, it is what it is. But yeah, I've been going to really circle all this back around. It's interesting that because did you encounter like all the weird shit, like the fucking people speaking in tongues and like the Holy Roman shit? Did you experience that in Mexico or was that in America?
Both.
No shit. Because to be honest,
I got told as a child I was gonna go to hell for wearing pants one time to church instead of a skirt. So
Jesus Christ. Well, because like at least my perception and a perception of a lot of people is like the Mexican culture of religion is a lot more formal and it's a lot more not like hyper discriminatory, but it's not the speaking in tongues and all that nonsense, but it's more just traditional like hymns and the stained glass windows and everyone's wearing their fucking
Catholicism.
Yeah. So, but you experienced that in Mexico and America.
Yeah, and so I got like the Christian version of it, which did not have nice windows. They were shitty churches every time. But yeah, so it would have been nice if they had like organized hymns and shit. Sometimes it had like a structure and whatever, but because it was so like the Holy Spirit reigns over you, you gotta let it show, and so people would be super extra all the time, and I just thought that was like what was normal. And I remember genuinely like there was a point, and it was one of those, oh fuck, I forget like the English word for it, but when they do like church like overnight, they do like the evening service and the fasting, and you're just churching all night.
Oh, so for me in the Christian churches that I went to, it wasn't necessarily like you're doing religion stuff all night because they were American kids and you had to keep them entertained. So it was a lock-in.
Yeah.
And basically, you locked a bunch of horny middle schoolers into a fucking church, expect them not to do anything bad, and then you made them watch movies all night.
Gotcha.
Like my favorite one. I thought it was so stupid as a kid. It was a church in El Paso that my grandmother, she volunteered at. And then we did a lock-in. And you know what the first movie we watched was? Paranormal Activity.
Nice.
In a church.
Nice. Learn
And so
learn from her mistakes.
So I'm sitting there like, Well, if we're getting haunted, it's now. So
It's happening right now.
But anyway, so you were a part of this, like what you experienced as a lock-in.
Yeah, but like with the parents as well.
Yeah.
So it was like a whole family thing. Yeah, like it was legit. Like we were genuinely churching all night.
Oh no.
Like I had maybe 2 that were just kids with some chaperones, but most of the ones I've been to were like for church with.
And you were awake all night.
Yeah, like I think I genuinely blocked out Easter because I never know when it's coming any year. And like my mom was a pastor, but the shit we did for Easter was so intense. It's like straight up just like it's so ritualistic that I don't understand the difference in the practices of that versus like Wicca, because it's so ritualistic. Genuinely, it was so ritualistic. Yeah. You have prayers, you have tongues, you're speaking of things you say, you have crazy. All of these things. It was so intense and so that it was difficult as a child to like know what was happening. But I have like a memory of being in one of those, and it was like a bunch of like big like prayer circles were happening, and people were like, some adults were like convulsing and some were like on the ground, and then I was like 8 or 9, and I was like, Mom, are they like okay?
Where was this?
At a church here
in Albuquerque.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I just remember being concerned, like, Mom, are they like okay? They're like seizing up. And she was like, it's just the Holy Spirit. And I was like, that looks terrible. Like, why would you want to go through that? They did not look, it didn't look pleasant. And it really freaked me out. And I was just like, okay, well, Jesus and shit, the Tower of Babel languages, whatever, like, do it.
They just have this fucking Rolodex of religious lingo they're just throwing at you.
And that's how it sounded. But I remember, let me paint you this picture. It's me, you're like 9 years old. You're holding hands with like one adult next to you, and then like a semi-older kid next to you, and then they're all holding hands and whatever. The like loudest, most like apocalyptic ass music is playing. Like Christian music in Spanish honestly kind of slaps because it's super intense. And it's like terrifying. But I just remember because it's a song about how like what's gonna happen after like Jesus takes his people, and there's mothers just gonna be like weeping for their children, and like death and like all these things, right? And so people are praying and crying and singing and convulsing. I'm a child. This thing's telling me how like I'm gonna feel if I get left behind is playing on the speaker for hours, and I just like start crying. And I remember just like sobbing at one of these things.
Yeah.
And my mom was like, you feel the Spirit now, honey, like let it go through you. And I was just like, think I genuinely was having a panic attack.
Yeah.
But
because you're getting all this fucking,
I'm getting the demons out.
Yeah, holy doom and gloom just fucking punched down your throat.
Since I was a kid, up until I was like, until I stopped going to church, and until I had a say, which was very late in life. My mom was a pastor, so that was also a thing. I went through it with church. I really did. And I tried a lot of different ones too. I went to Calvary. I went to Copper Point back when it was First Family Church, and then again in Copper. Like I genuinely tried, and I just would end up meeting and then I realized, and I was very aware of it, that all of those churches, they were just social. Really.
Yes,
it's just
I agree
socializing
with that.
on like a shared interest, I
agree. Yeah.
And it was always preached to me very obviously differently from my mom and my family. So it was.
So can I ask you something?
Yeah.
So experiencing this, I remember feeling like this as a kid. Because you bring up it's very social and it's socially based, right?
Oh, yeah.
Did it all feel like the way people were talking to each other, the way they were conversing, the way they would talk, sip their coffee, did it all feel like there was just this thin veil of bullshit?
Oh, it was not thin.
And you're looking at them and you're like, but none of you mean what you're like.
I'm like, I don't think you guys genuinely like each other.
Yeah, exactly.
It's
exactly
inauthentic.
It's like, but because like for me, especially like with my parents, like they were fucking horrible at home, but then to see them at church, then it's like, I love the Lord, and then, it's like,
tell me about
and especially like with after my dad split, with my mom especially, I would look at her and just be like, why don't you treat me this well at home? What the fuck is going on? And I'm like, what the shit is, and it wasn't just her or the other person, it was like going to youth group and how like the adults talked, but then the kids were just bewildered and like we'd bullshit and whatever, talk about fucking Call of Duty and Mario or whatever the fuck, right? You're just kids. You don't know how to kids know how to lie, but I don't think they knew how to lie to each other. They knew how to lie to the higher ups to like get at. It's like little jailbreaks are happening every day, right?
My parents taught me to not tell anyone anything from a young age. It was because we were like illegal when we moved, so they were like, if you talk to white people, do not ever tell them where you're from. Do not ever tell them where your family's from. Do not ever tell them about this, about that. Don't tell them about immigration. In fact, just like maybe don't talk to them anyway. People actually avoid cops altogether as well. So it was like I always sort of like had that. So I actually did learn how to lie to everybody.
Oh shit!
Because I had to do it from a very young age.
Okay.
Or just leave out the truth.
So I bet it was easy for you to detect the shit from the fucking adults.
Oh, I was overly aware, and that's been my issue since I was a child. I've always been overly aware of what was happening, and that might just be mental illness, but it felt very crazy,
That's a survival instinct right there. I think personally, like seriously, like if you take your situation growing up as a little kid and you extrapolate that and you put that 10,000, 15,000 years ago, you're in a little village and you got to make from village A to village B. And maybe village B doesn't like your people that much, but you still got to fit in anyway.
Yeah.
You got to survive. You got to commingle. That's exactly what that is. And you're fighting off fucking saber-toothed tigers and shit. You know what I mean? Like, that's exactly what that is. That's just, I think that's ingrained in the human system.
Yeah.
And the fact that it was, how would you say it? Like the fact that it was amplified for you as a kid in a modern society, like that fucking sucks, obviously. But I would imagine growing up, not that it would save you. I'm sure you've been through your fair share of heartbreak, but in all aspects of life, that's a good asset to have. Otherwise, like the other extreme opposite of that is you're the person walking through life like everything's great. Everything's fine, and you live in this fucking world of ignorance. Yeah. To the point where you just get bliss. Yeah. Well, it's bliss until it's not, you know.
Until life eventually smacks you in the face. Somehow, you can try to be ignorant for a while, but if life tries to smack you with it and you choose to still be ignorant, that's on you.
Has there... I don't want to re-ask an old question, but like...
Good. I probably forgot it already, so you're good.
Like, as you've become your own person and you become an adult and you've become a woman, like... Because you bring up that your personality is very much questioning and second-guessing and, kind of just... taking a step back from what you're being told, which I think is a good quality, especially today. And I think I would honestly take it a step further, and not that I would ever claim to know what true Christianity is, but I think a lot of the roots of Christianity is based in questioning. Like a buddy of mine who, funny enough, talk about people from elementary school. Me and his sister went to elementary school together. Mothers were friends through the church, funny enough.
Classic.
And so I would hang out at their house, but I only knew him as the older brother by like 5 years. So like I was fucking 5 at the time he was 10. I'm not going to intermingle and whatever.
Right.
Flash forward fucking almost 2 decades. And as I used to train, well, I still do. I've had to take a break from the gym. Train down at Legion Iron off of the freeway in Cole. And whenever I go at night, there's this jacked ass dude in there. And I would kind of like recognize him, but not really recognize him. We started talking because he has a podcast and I have this. And I looked him up and I was like, I saw his last name. And I was like, is your sister? And we reconnected that way. He worked in Calvary for like 5 years. He got a job at the labs now, I think.
What's his name?
Sean Kerwin.
Does he have like blue-green eyes?
Kinda. I think so. I think so, yeah. I've stared into his eyes too deeply lately. I miss my friend. If you're watching, I miss you, buddy.
If you're watching, I might know you. I don't know.
But he worked at the church, but he worked like in the hierarchy of the church.
Oh yeah,
and
I knew a lot of people in those hierarchies.
And the department the area he worked in was apologetics, which is basically like, for people who listen and that don't know, it's basically saying, hey, to really dumb it down, it's, hey, God's not real, prove me otherwise. And then the people in apologetics are showing you why God is real and why all that stuff. And I want to sit down with him again and learn a lot more beforehand, because he took me to fucking school when he sat down and did my podcast. Like, that dude went up and down, left and right. I was like, man, I can't rebut that. Fuck, I need to learn more, right? But something that he said really stuck with me is, because he walked away from Christianity for a very long time, and he went back to it. And even to this day, he runs his own Christian-based podcast. He does Bible studies every week with a group that he leads, stuff like that. And he goes, every time because I'll read the Bible every day, but every time I open the Bible to learn, to really, not just to like take in the word and like praise God. That's part of his version of it, right?
I mean, it's extremely well written literature at the very least.
Oh yeah, I agree. And he goes, every time I open it to learn, though, to specifically pull something new out of it, I go in wanting to believe there is no God. I have not found that yet. And that stuck with me. So I'm like, okay, if this dude's that educated.
See, I found like 5 plot holes in the first page of Genesis. What do you mean?
But so that's my thing, though, is like, with someone as educated as him, I'm just interested in like what's held him back. I feel like that could be a whole episode. It's like, what's held you back from walking away again?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's stuff like that I hear, and I'm like, It has there, and the reason I bring that up is, has there ever been anything that's like made you curious about religion again, or is it just like, fuck it?
I've always been curious, but with being at church all the time, reading the Bible all the time from a specific lens, my mom being a pastor, not being able to like really get away from it, I started wanting to learn about other religions and sort of just like what other people believe in. And it shifted a lot in my mind, because I learned about like Islam and Buddhism and like Taoism and like all these things. And I was like, people who are very deep into their religion believe their religion just as hard as my parents believe theirs. You know what I mean? They believe that they have the truth just as hard. And it makes sense why a lot of religious people are so annoying. If you think you have the key to life. No, go ahead. If you think you have the key to life, you're obviously gonna want to share it with people. I get that in a way, but that's also something that held me. I'm like, if they are just as faithful and as loyal, to their beliefs, why is it that they are wrong when they genuinely believe in their heart, just like you, that they are right? So what is it? And it's always the people who are the most dedicated who are going to believe the most or whatever. And it's, it just, that was always something that kind of blew my mind. And so I got into like the spirituality and whatever. And I feel like, because I've always been like into research and learning. So I've always wanted to learn a lot more about all of those things. And I was like, okay, I might not believe all these stories I've been told as a kid, because I went back to read the Bible from just like a neutral lens. My goal was to just be neutral. It's like, I just want to read it and just see. I've known people who were like atheists. They went back and read the Bible, became Christian, and the opposite. So I just wanted to see. And
the opposite is I've heard a little bit of that.
And I was
really interests me, where people are like, I'm a Christian, and I actually sat down and read the thing front to back, and I was like, well, that's nonsense, and then walked away from it.
That's how I felt as well, for sure, because I remember reading it growing up, because I had to, and being like, that just doesn't make sense. Like, to me, so much of it just sounds like just it's gonna be so offensive.
Dude, no. Okay, so just because I say I'm Christian, I'm not gonna get offended. Like, I've had one of my very first episodes, like in the first 10, I've had someone just straight up say "fuck God" and like it's not real, and we had a good conversation about it. It's not gonna offend me, I promise.
No, just so much of it, reading it, just sounds like some older bros getting together, getting drunk, trying to write some books about how like the Holy One up there told them that these are the rules. That's what it sounds like to me, because it's all and I've also always been presented with women are submissive, men are the blah, 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 blah. It's been told to me by my parents, by family, whatever, like, your brother can do this because he's a man. You cannot because you're a woman.
An example being?
Staying out late, having friends, going out more than once, having hobbies, joining sports, generally speaking, going out more than like 2 business days apart as well. Like all of these other dating, talking to people, getting into hobbies, getting time out of the house.
Could I play devil's advocate a little bit?
Sure.
So, because I'm very curious about that.
Yeah.
I don't agree.
Okay.
With the whole, wouldn't let you do sports, so like extracurriculars would be social. Looking back on that, because I'm sure you fucking have.
Oh yeah. I'm like 9 years therapy.
Yeah,
baby.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure. Yeah. Looking back on that, do you think that obviously religion's at the forefront of your family, but did any of that come from a place of, your parents thinking, okay, all right, we're immigrants. Like, no matter what happens, no matter what type of documentation we get, we are immigrants into this country. This is still a relatively foreign country to our daughter. She's learning. Because I'd imagine they're telling you this between the ages of 14 and like 18, right?
No, they're telling me this from the ages of being born to now.
The whole like no dating and all that.
Well, I mean, no dating. I sort of was like, sorry, I'm gonna date anything else, and then I had to clean everything outside and all of that stuff, cooking.
Yeah, so I want to get to that.
It was just also just domestic stuff, just the way we got treated by people, the respect that we had, and like, as girls growing up, it was very obvious that like any man could tell us what to do because they had the right to, regardless of the age. That's sort of the I guess programming I got. That
sounds a lot like just very traditional, like old school. That's how my dad's side of the family was. Because my dad's side of the family, him and his brothers and sisters, there's like fucking 8 of them, I think. They were all born here in America, but the parents, so they're both passed, but my grandfather and grandmother on his side, one was from, I always make this shit up. One was from Guadalajara, I think, and the other one was from either Mexico City or Chihuahua. I always fucking mix that shit up. But they grew up and like had their adult lives like into their 20s in Mexico, ended up coming over illegally to America and met each other and so on and so forth. And that sounds like a very traditional household that they would have grown up in, right? The woman does all the domesticating, raising the home, not all that stuff. And then my grandfather, he pretty much died working. Like he was a rail yard worker, both in Mexico and America. And as far as I was told, the only real difference is just that in America, he got paid a little more, but he was still treated the same because it was fucking illegal work. And this is in the fucking 50s, right? Because, this was right after World War II. Because
would have to be then.
Because my grandfather came over with his brother, my great uncle, and he ended up getting drafted somehow into the Navy, and so he ended up, or was it the Navy or the fucking Army? Radio silence. I think he was because it was the Army, because that motherfucker was in D-Day. So it was in the Army.
Not to laugh.
He survived that shit. I have no fucking idea how, but he survived that shit. Yeah. But that sounds like the household they would have grown up in.
I honestly think it's so intertwined because Mexico is, generally speaking, an extremely religious country.
Yeah.
And I don't know that tradition is, like, can tradition be atheist?
I wouldn't say atheist, but it's just ingrained in who they are as a person, regardless of the religion.
But I think a lot of it depends. It comes from teaching, because I got a lot of, like, the reason Mexico is so Christian and Catholic is because of colonization. Prior to it, that's not what we had. You know,
Right.
we had Aztecs and
Right.
all of these other things where, like, the hierarchies were different. And I am not the most knowledgeable person on that. I don't know what the treatment of people was, you know. But I also do know that there was, like, different sorts of respect. I do know a lot of indigenous tribes in a way, like, respected, like, a woman's, like, moon cycle, and, you know, like, they like just things like that, where there was just more consideration to, like, our existence is more than just support.
Right. And because you were bringing life into the world.
Right.
And that was held on that pedestal.
Yeah.
And you're right.
Christianity turned that into a chore, into a necessity instead of a gift.
Yeah.
In my experience.
Well, I wouldn't say it didn't get taken. The radicalization of it took away the gift aspect for sure.
Yeah.
But I know from my own personal experience with that side of the family being Catholic, they very much held, like, the Virgin Mary into a very high regard, and so on and so forth. And then the praising of the wife is funny, because I've thought of this before, looking back on it, even like in the Christian side of things, there was a praising of the wife, but was a praising of the wife in the very domesticated version.
Yeah.
And
what is it?
Yeah. And so going back to your parents, from their point of view, it sounds like a very old school Mexican, Hispanic, like, upbringing that would have led to that. And then going into the more dating and social thing, the only thing I can really come up with, again, to play, like, devil's advocate, is, well, again, we're you know, our daughter's growing up, we're immigrants, this country's still new to her, we're all learning it still. We know what happens to immigrants. We know what happens to young women in general, even if they're American. And we have a beautiful young daughter. What if something happens? But then because my mom kind of did the same thing, not for the same reasons, obviously. I was not a beautiful young woman. But, you know, instead of what could have been a proper education on how to navigate social situations, how to protect yourself, how to align yourself with the right people that have your best interests. And that always kind of fucked me up as a little kid, as like a teenager. Like I would get told that in, like, in middle school and high school, they need to have your best interest at heart. And I remember thinking to myself, like, yo, I'm 13 years old. I don't have my best interest at heart.
Like, what does that mean?
What do I want for myself?
Yeah.
I'm like, my best interest for my friends is, like, can we pool enough money together to get a box of Chinese food? You know what I mean?
Can we just eat together and have fun?
So I kind of see it like that, where it's like the overprotective parents being like, we're just going to overcorrect and do everything we can to get her out of harm's way.
And I think it was definitely both. And that's also something that I've had to deal with a lot in therapy is I think a lot of healing, like the shitty part of therapy, the shitty part of self-work is like seeing yourself in other people's eyes and like going through things in their eyes. And so I came to that conclusion in therapy where it's like, okay, they're in a brand new country. They left their entire life, their entire family. For us, the reason they did that was because my mom was walking home from walking us to school one time, and this like van with a bunch of random guys like stopped next to her and tried to get her in the van. But my mom outran it and was able to get home, and they were like, we're going to move. Like, we can't raise our kids here.
Yeah.
So I completely understand the overprotection.
And do you remember that?
No, I wasn't with her. It was after she dropped us off.
Oh, after, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. My
you're
brain
good.
says that we were walking home.
No, I speak stupidly, so.
No, I'm just dumb. I'm the wrong person to have a mic, dude.
Yeah. Same. But so I knew that was also a thing, but that still didn't excuse the rights and respect and the treatment differences that we got in the home, away from exterior people, away from other men, away from society, away from cops and stuff. When it was just us at home, it didn't, neither the tradition or the religion excused, in my eyes, the way they treated us and how differently we were treated in terms of just really anything. And if I dared raise my voice about something one time, about anything, like you're just getting beat up.
Right.
Or
Yeah.
whatever.
No, I felt that.
You know,
Yeah, for real.
So it's just like, it didn't feel fair for that to justify their treatment in the house. So the way I saw it was just like, these are just your personal beliefs that you've been raised with, that you still continue to carry, and you found something that can excuse those beliefs. So that's sort of how I saw it, because I also learned from a very young age that you can manipulate religion to fit your narrative really in any sort of way, because a lot of it is up for interpretation, or like a sort of thing, like where when you have friends who are like, they know premarital sex is wrong, but then they'll do it or whatever.
Well, I found
Jesus will forgive you.
Yeah, exactly.
Just as bad as murder, you fucking killer. So I'm just like, what's the truth then, huh?
Well, I've found that with modern Christianity, especially, it's, they'll mold it to what fits their life.
Yeah.
And I'm fucking guilty of that. I'll be honest.
I mean, we're all guilty.
And that's
of it in terms of our beliefs.
And I think that's and I don't think that. I think when people use that aspect of the religion where it's like, well, yeah, I'm gonna get forgiven anyway, so what's the point? Well, you're missing the point. Like, in my opinion, God expects you to mess up. But he also expects you to learn from it and do better. I think that's the part that's kind of missing. It's not supposed to be like a scapegoat. I think it's just explaining the intangible part of human existence, where it's like, you're going to mess up, you're going to make mistakes, you're going to do these things that vary in degree, but you're supposed to learn from them. And I'm not, and I wouldn't, like, I get that in the Bible, like, everything is like sin is a sin. Right,
yeah,
I get
because
that.
I never got anything like taught to me that way. It was like, these are the rules. If you fuck up,
and
you're terrible. Don't fuck up.
Yeah, and these are things that I've had to learn myself. Like, I've had to not teach myself, but like come to realize by myself.
Like relearn it.
Yeah, and I think in the way I interpret all that, it really is that's, how do I say this? Like, getting that out of the Bible is supposed to be, again, God or Jesus, or even however you want to say it, showing us what that intangible part of the human experience is, that is learning and growing, like that character development, like what you're eventually, like the idea that you're supposed to eventually become something. I don't think that exists. I think everyone's continually growing and evolving and changing. I think that goes until the day you die. I don't think there's a
hopefully right.
Right, yeah. Like, definitely there's some people that get into an age and they're stuck in their ways and whatever, but I would like to believe that you can make the conscious choice to get better as time goes on. And I think you're supposed to.
Yeah.
And I think, and what kind of like fucks me up too is like, well, there's things I like doing that go against the Bible for sure. But if I didn't do those things, I think the risk in my life would go down for sure. And since we already talked about it, one of them is premarital sex. If I just, not that I'm actively just fucking slanging dick, because I'm not.
Left and right.
Yeah, definitely not. But let's say, let's say that I was, right?
Okay.
Because I speak from it more in an aspect of just being in a relationship. Like that's a part of a relationship, right? But in general, if you took premarital sex out of your life, because I've thought about this, and this is something else that came up in the episode I did with Sean. Take that out of your life.
Like, just in general, like, it's hard for me to, because now that I know what my own company is like, and that I like fuck with myself pretty heavy, and like I enjoy my company. I've made it so. I used to hate it.
Yeah.
I hated my thoughts. I hated my brain. I hated having to be
Feel
stuck
that.
with myself.
Been there. Yeah,
And I
get
got
that.
to the point of, extreme mental illness, super suicidal, all of that, where I was just like, okay, how can I become somebody that I enjoy being
Yeah.
in general and being with, And so I was like, I need to figure that out. And so I made a very conscious decision. And I was like, I genuinely need to just figure out how I'm going to stop feeling so shitty about myself. And it wasn't because of them. It was just more so like I needed to put in conscious time into myself. And that just wound up eating a lot of my time with other people because I needed to put that time into myself. I had a lot to work through, and now I'm at a point where I'm like, I know what I'm like alone. I've made myself someone I enjoy. I enjoy my hobbies. I like my life the way it is. It's now just like I just have higher standards now. I'm like, I don't mind dropping you if you're not making my life better. I like the way my company is. Like, be just as fun as my own company or better, or like leave me alone.
You found like comfort in your solitude.
I found preference in it, and I feel like it's a problem.
I don't view that as a problem at all. I really don't. Like, because again, I mean, you answered or you explained my philosophy for me. No, seriously, your life became better out of that.
It did.
And, the amount of risk you took out of your life is like you have no longer risk of a pregnancy. You have no longer risk of an STD. You have no longer risk of like an emotional, like not that emotional attachment's a bad thing, but like heartbreak, that's of any kind of degree.
I try to be more aware,
like taken out of it.
Set my boundaries.
Yeah.
Like I've learned to be very like honest with people and how I'm feeling, and I've found much better results in that, and being like, and also a lot of people are not used to being called out. And like I also come across people try to pull the same shit that worked on me way back then. That I'm just like, sorry,
hey,
I'm not the right person now.
I've heard that line.
Yeah.
Hey, wait a minute. I've read this story before. I know how it plays out.
Exactly. So
really shitty sex and no text back. Yeah. Great.
So it's just, I can now catch those patterns. I can now feel like I'm a much better judge of character now, and it's because I've allowed myself to give myself the time to figure out what I value and what I judge as a good character for my life. What's like compatible to who I am, and sometimes it feels like it's a problem. I have friends who can't be single for long at all, like ever, and I'm just like, what do you mean?
Yeah. Well,
I'll spend 4 days straight at my house. I work from home. I have all my music stuff. I have all my art stuff. I have my dog, and I will still not have enough time to get everything I want to get done.
Yeah.
And that's, for a lot of reasons, partly being I have like ADHD and I'm distractible and all these other things, but it's also like I will feel like I'm continuously like hustling in one way or another, like I'm putting energy into my day from day to night. So when I feel very like emotionally satisfied in like my friendships, and in order to just like genuinely enjoy my time, because like I will spend an entire evening on my own with my dog, like doing my weird hobbies and having my weird TV shows playing in the background and having a blast, and then getting up and doing my work at home and paying my bills and doing it again. And it's like I change my hobbies, I change what I work on every day, but I have the ones I'm interested in. But like I don't know, it feels like it's become a problem how much it feels like it's almost now my coping mechanism to isolate, because to just I don't know. I feel like it's becoming a problem, which I just would prefer it.
Well, humans inherently are social creatures.
Mm-hmm.
We are.
Yeah.
But, because it's not the norm. Like, obviously, right? But, like what you're experiencing, everything you just described, that's not the norm.
Well,
but
I mean, it's taken 9 years of therapy.
But it's growing, though. The idea of whether it's celibacy, whether it's not dating, whether it's being like how do I describe it? Like being your own person.
Yeah.
Like I feel like as a society, we just overcorrected so hard with social media that the whiplash to that is like, okay, I'm just gonna quit everything and just figure out who the fuck I am as a human.
And I had that moment.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people our age are just like waking up and starting to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't view that as a bad thing for like a multitude of reasons. Well, for one, we are living in a hypersexualized society. Hypersexualized, right? To a true detriment to an extreme, like again, and obviously the first thing that comes to mind that people that hear that, and obviously the fucking podcast logo looks a certain way, like if you're gonna do OnlyFans, if you're gonna do all that stuff, like live your life, but there are detriments to it. And make no mistake, that's making fun of it. Sorry, I thought it's funny. Okay, I thought it because I showed you what I showed you, and it's funny. Fuck you, and fuck anyone who thinks otherwise. That's funny, and at the bare minimum, it's stupid. I'll take stupid, actually. I'll take stupid. I take that as a compliment.
It's kind of witty.
Yeah, thanks.
You're welcome.
I haven't heard that one yet. Thank you. But, there is detriment to that. And we live in this hyper-sexualized society to where there's almost like people lie to themselves about there's no consequence. And I'm not even saying like STs or pregnancy, but like emotionally, mentally speaking, there are consequences to going through your hoe phase.
Yeah, for
like
real.
there are real consequences to that aside from physical stuff. And then let's say like you decide one day like, okay, like if you want me asking, is marriage still a thing for you?
I mean, it's not like an
Are you
aspiration.
open to it?
I'm open to
You're
it.
open
Like
to
if
it.
I meet,
So
that'd be
perfect.
Sure.
That's how I feel about having kids.
Right.
I don't want fucking kids.
See, I'm the opposite. I'm like, I want to be a mom,
See-
but like the husband, not necessary. I mean, it's not. Science is at the point where I can get a surrogate and a donor, and I feel like that keeps my standards high.
I love it. Oh my God.
It keeps my standards high.
That's how I feel about having kids. Is like I don't want kids for a lot of reasons right now, but maybe one day if it makes sense and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So now that you find yourself in a place where you are, you're like, okay, well, if the next guy that tries to hit on me or like slides in my DMs or whatever the fuck happens, whatever that next instance is, your bar is so fucking high for people.
Yeah,
It's
in general.
Hopefully, because again, nothing's perfect, and people can be real fucking shitty.
Yeah,
and people
and I'm
can,
absolutely not.
and people can be
at all,
yeah,
or
and people can
close.
be very persuasive, sneaky,
Pushy.
huh?
Pushy.
Yeah. Well, they can weasel their way into your life. Mm-hmm. And hopefully the next time, whenever it happens, if it happens that you meet somebody, you're able to like kind of snuff that shit out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And you have that standard so high that your vetting system is like that
I
much
have
more
a
well tuned.
very lengthy vetting system.
Because when your comparison is the fun you have with yourself.
Yeah, like
it's like
getting ready and then being kind of disappointed and then like, all right, bye. You know? So it's like now my standards are just higher to where the people I keep in my life I try to make sure are good.
I was having this conversation with a buddy of mine like a week ago. He's like, dude, life would be so great and easy if I wasn't just so fucking horny all the time. And I was
I
like,
mean,
dude.
it sucks, but like we got hands. You don't necessarily need other people. I'm just saying, be good at it yourself and your standards will be higher for other people. So I make sure the people that I keep in my life are like good for me and they're meeting those standards and they're making my time worth it. And if I feel like my time's getting played with or I'm getting messed with, like I try to be very honest about it.
Yeah.
And I'd be like, hey, I don't like this behavior. Is there anything I'm doing that you maybe dislike? Let's just have a discourse. And I'm not like, I don't yell. I'm not really that type of an arguer. So
you don't seem like not.
Well, I've come to it.
Well,
I used to have a temper, but
well, not to say that you're not a confrontational type, but you don't seem like this. And I speak this from personal experience. I'm finding myself there. It's like I don't want to spend the energy yelling at you.
Yeah, it's just not worth it. I can make my points
because I was
they
that
don't
guy.
need to be loud.
Because I was that guy for sure. Like I'm a loud human being. Like that's never gonna go away. I'm just a loud. I'm just a loud human being. But growing up as a kid, especially into high school and college, I was very, very quick to anger. And that was, I feel like that's a big one of the multitude of reasons that my first major relationship didn't work out. Not that I was ever quick to anger in an abusive manner, but I was quick to anger to the point where it made the situation uncomfortable.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I didn't know how to really understand what I was feeling.
Yeah.
Like
and
what,
get control of your emotions.
Like,
I feel like a lot of no offense. I feel like a lot of men forget that anger is an emotion.
Oh,
you got to learn to control too.
Exactly.
It's a big emotion.
Yeah, it was a lot of like, well, okay, that upset me. Why does that upset me? I don't know why that upsets me, but I'm going to bury it deep down. And then so when my poor girlfriend at the time asked me what's bothering you, and I just hold it in, and then I don't know, something's out of place or she does something so menial that I just, and then admittedly because she was young too, she had that problem as well.
Right.
So it was just this fucking, powder keg.
Yeah.
Of just
I've been
stupidity.
there, of just like anger back and forth, and like passive aggression, and then anger, passive aggression, aggression, and all that. I've definitely been in those situations too, because my dad is a hell of a temper, and my sister copy and paste that temper so hard, and I had it as well, but I also kind of because I spent a lot more time with my mom, learned a lot of like her ways, and she's a very like sort of a meek, is that the right word? Like sort of like more gentle person.
Yeah. That meek's a good way to put it. I don't think meek's an insult.
I don't think so either.
It's just like quiet.
You're gentle. You're to yourself.
Yeah, gentle. Yeah.
Yeah, and so that's kind of how I saw my mom. So I think by just DNA adopted like my dad's temper, and I had to work because I knew that again, I was very aware, and I knew that I didn't like it when he yelled, because it made me just take him not seriously. I'm like, as soon as you start yelling at me, I know that what you're saying is like not strong enough to hold in an argument, so I don't care, and I'm gonna dissociate. There's
this I hear something like that. This is an episode of SpongeBob. Have you seen the Band Geeks episode?
Of course. Yeah.
So when Squidward is standing up on the stage of the band practice, and he goes, when people want to sound correct, they're loud, or they sound like smart. They want to, or sound good, they're loud, right? And Plankton's in the back. He's like, correct.
Tiniest one there, little man syndrome to the max.
Old school SpongeBob was the shit.
I love SpongeBob.
Was the
it
shit.
Raised me, low-key.
It was Nick at Night on cable. It was SpongeBob, and then
George Lopez. If you wake up at midnight.
Exactly. So because I forget what War. Yeah, Lowrider.
Yeah.
It was George Lopez's big ass
they're all
head
just like bouncing
floating
slow motion. I'd wake up like in a fever sweat at like 2 a.m. and Nick and Night's just playing George Lopez, and I'm like,
George Lopez and Home Improvement with Tim Allen.
Never gone to Home Improvement. I watched a lot of Reba because we grew up with
Reba?
For so much of my childhood in the U.S. we did not have cable, so we got Reba, we got
same.
Judge Judy, we got fucking what was that one he died? Jerry Springer.
Jerry Springer.
Yeah.
And Maury.
And like 2.5 Men.
Yeah,
so when I was learning English.
2.5 Men.
So when I was learning English, I would learn it from there. But I did watch Reba a lot, who I thought was Kathy Griffin for the longest time. Thought they were one person.
Me too.
Until literally last year.
Oh, okay. Not that long.
I didn't know, but so I learned a lot of English in the Southern accent because of Reba.
Well, because, oh my God. That's fucking hilarious. Oh my God. Because Kathy Griffin, she was that psycho during Trump's presidency that she held the fucking...
To be honest, I feel like people overreacted.
She had the picture of Trump's fucking head. Here's my thing.
And I thought they were the same person, so it was jarring. I was like, my childhood, Reba, what?
My whole thing about that was like, look, should an American citizen be doing that? Probably not. But at the same time... That's the beauty of this country.
And comedy.
You're able to say, I didn't think it was funny.
I mean, I just feel like it was comedic expression. I feel some people thought it was funny. I didn't care for it, but
like I understood that she was trying to be funny and like half funny, half political statement, but it was mostly just a bad joke.
Yeah.
And I mean, look, again, an American citizen probably shouldn't be doing that, Democratic or Republican president. But again, that's what makes this country, what's supposed to make this country beautiful, is that you can protest the government in any way you want as long as it's nonviolent, as long as you're not fucking burning shit down. Well,
which happened
until
like
when
2020
2020 turned around. But.
Well, when Obama got elected, there was a lot of those like honky dory places that were doing a lot of burning.
That was ugly. Like the
stuff like that's been happening. Just this time she was famous.
Because I remember like when I was younger. And Obama did get voted, and I remember seeing pictures of people, predominantly white people, rioting with like puppet versions of Obama on a noose. Yeah. That's fucked up.
Yeah.
Like, that's fucked up.
We learned about segregation and, like, the people protesting, the first little black girl trying to go to an integrated school. And it's like, those people are still alive. They're still voting. And, that's very much still some people's reality. We forget that.
Yeah. And the only reason I would say that's more fucked up than the whole picture of I almost said Reba, with Kathy Griffin with a decapitated Trump head was like, first of all, there's a history of specifically that race being lynched in that manner. And secondly, I'm not exactly convinced that those group of people wouldn't do that to him. I don't believe for a second that if you gave Kathy Griffin the best sword in the world that she would fucking decapitate Trump. There is no fucking way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I forget where we were before we got into this. I remember George Lopez's big ass head and Nick at Night.
SpongeBob playing loud, yelling.
Oh yeah, because your father yelled a lot, and
Sum it up.
and that's why I'm in therapy, because me too.
That's why I went celibate for a year.
Yeah. Oh yes, thank you. Celibacy.
Oh, okay. Perfect.
Celibacy. So I feel like that is becoming a more common response to this, again, this hypersexualized world we live in. And again, like, I will never sit here and say that sex isn't great, because it definitely can be. It can be. But at the same time, when you remove premarital sex out of your life and you keep that consistent, it tends to be a positive. And then I think a lot of that applies to everything in the Bible, most things in the Bible that are wrong. Again, except for stuff like gay marriage and stuff like that, because it's like, we already talked about that. Like, how does that compute? How do I put this? Like, now that, again, like, you're growing up and you're doing a lot of this questioning, and like, we just went through the whole Roe v. Wade thing happening and all of that getting revoked. As a woman, like, because I can only see things so far, like, just being a guy in America. As a woman, like, when anything happens and it's in the media and it gets fucking, whether you think it's blown out of proportion or not, but it's publicized everywhere, it's talked about everywhere, all the talking heads are going on about it. It's in every, I would almost say news article, but like every like Facebook and Twitter link and Instagram post. And it's like, oh, you're attacking this group of people. Do you feel attacked? Like, when Roe v. Wade happened and they got rid of it, do you feel attacked? Or do you feel like, fuck, that sucks? But do you, like, as a woman, do you feel like that's attacking you?
I feel like indirectly, it's at the very least another thing setting a rule on things you can't do. You know, and it's also people who can't empathize, mostly setting the rules. And I watched a video and it was like viral for a bit, so I'm sure people know what I'm talking about. This girl's like asking a guy, and she's like, is abortion okay if like the girl gets raped? And he's like, no, it's murder. It's like, is it okay if blah, 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 blah? Is it okay if it's medically necessary? Blah, blah. And he's like, no, it's murder, it's murder, it's murder. And she's like, is abortion okay if you're married and get another girl pregnant? And then he was just very quiet. Yeah. So it's like, oh, okay. So murder's only okay when it makes your life easier in your eyes. But it's not murder then. So, and I saw a comedian that was like, listen, if Republicans really believe abortion is killing babies, then they're being pretty chill about it. If they genuinely believe it's like straight up murdering babies, do you think it's like everything and every Planned Parenthood would be burning right now if they just genuine belief that it's the same as murdering a baby that's alive and crying? You know what I mean? So it's like a lot of the beliefs that are so strong about like that, they're either, most of the time I have found, rooted in religion or just straight up like just wanting to control circumstances.
Yes.
And I've also seen people who say that having the baby should be like, they need the consequence in order to learn to not do that again.
Wow.
You know, so it's kind of like, well, what if you're like a poor child in Estancia who doesn't know shit, and then you get pregnant? Like, you're not even gonna give them Medicare afterwards. You just want them to have that baby so they would know that that's wrong. We're gonna get more traumatized people in the world, you know? So it's more so just feels like fuck, like just more rules and more stuff. And like I try to be like smart about stuff. Like I have like a 10-year IUD, you know, so I'm good for a while and I don't got to worry about shit. But it's hard when stuff like that happens. A lot of the ones where it feels more personal and attacking are like racial ones as well. those are the ones that sort of make me feel the most like othering, because a lot of times it's just you just hear some crazy opinions from people that you're like, oh shit, like I didn't think you would say something like that, or whatever, to where when it comes to like a women's rights thing, a lot of the time when I hear like a shitty opinion from a guy, like I'm used to it, but where I'm hearing like a semi-racist opinion from someone who's like kind of my friend, it hits different than just like, from my upbringing, men are all these things. Seeing one of them act shitty isn't like groundbreaking, but if I feel like my friend is being racist, then that just, like hurts different.
Yeah.
So that's sort of the way I've seen it, because I've already like had like that very like pessimistic view on men, which I have been working on. I will say I'm very lucky. I have great men in my life, friends, otherwise, whatever, things are good. But that's sort of what it feels a little bit more like an attack. It's when it's like racial, and it's to keep people like me who had no choice in where they're from, to keep us just like separate. That's when it feels attacking, because it comes from places you wouldn't expect.
So what immediately comes to mind on like a big scale is when Trump, during the 2016 election, he was running for it, when he became under fire for saying that people coming over from Mexico, he goes, some of them are good people, but they're murderers, they're rapists, they're drug dealers. How did you digest that back then, and has it changed since?
I thought it was audacious of a presidential candidate to be so, I guess, open with their beliefs. But I think was more so surprised by the people excusing it in my life, because I thought it was very interesting. And I think every group has good and bad people. And if we judged a society based on their criminals, I think the U.S. would be the worst off, the most incarcerations in the entire world. And it doesn't make up for like the most population proportionally. So I think if we're going to judge people based on their criminals, this would be a pretty bleak world. And I think a lot of the times people, especially when are an immigrant, or you're someone from a different country and you get stuck in this position where you're in poverty, everything's a lot different and all of these things, it's a lot harder for people who are surrounded by crime to not eventually resort to it as a survival thing. I was very lucky that my parents kept us very, very closed off, because I have neighbors that I went to school with who went deep into gangs and drugs and are now not okay. And just, generally stuff like that. So, yeah.
So you mentioned you had friends and family members that went into gangs and such. Do you think that was, how do I say this? I want to word this right. Not so I don't like offend, but I want to get my point across.
Yeah.
I can tell you're very easily like not offendable.
I'm really not.
Yeah. So I'm trying to like get my point across. Like, do you think that choice of life, was that avoidable for them?
For them, I think honestly, I can tell you a few of them it wasn't. I can tell you for a few of them, I knew their home life, I knew their family, I knew the way things were, I knew the environment they were in based off of the adults around them, and it would have been more surprising for them to not go down that path.
Is that because there were family members in gangs already, or is that because they saw no way out of their situation at a young age, so they immediately went to gangs?
It's a combination of something. Some people have, gang-related people, relatives, I guess, and some people have a really difficult home life, and the only place they find community is in something that's in the form of a gang.
Yeah.
And
that's something that's not talked about a whole lot.
Yeah.
And I think that's a real thing.
It's a very real thing.
And the only
people
place
just want friendship.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, no, for real. The bravado, the brotherhood, and that's really something I've only ever heard talked about from a Vice expose back when Vice actually like meant something.
Yeah, and they made good shit.
They actually made like good journalism and documentaries, and they were all free for the most part.
Yeah.
I loved watching their stuff on gangs, and a lot of the stuff that the gamers they talked to that they said was like, yeah, I'm here because I wanted a family that actually cared about me. And it's like, well, because obviously outside things like, do they care about you? I was like, do they really care about you? Is it really like a caring thing? Is it like a weird symbiotic business thing?
I mean, it's like like forbidden sorority, you know. I feel like that's how like gangs are, because it's like, can you form bonds? Yeah, but like you're also having to pay your dues to be there and to be a part of, you know, that family. So I think a lot of those connections are also I don't know. I think some connections hit some people different, and they just find themselves in environments where it would genuinely be so much more surprising for them to make it out okay than to not like just succumb. Like some people, it sucks to admit, some people are genuinely just fucking dealt a shit hand.
Yeah.
From the start.
For sure.
From the start.
Well, that's the whole like pull yourself up from your bootstraps. That's a load of bullshit.
It is.
That is
like,
and
it sounds like that's the people who haven't really struggled.
Well, exactly.
Say that.
Exactly. And like it's such a minor level of things. Like I know from my personal experience, all of this did not happen by myself. Mm-hmm. Like this took help from friends.
Yeah.
And family. Like
for sure.
Like,
I owe my friends so much.
Like not just like where I am in life, but like just podcasting in general. I could not fucking afford all this shit by myself.
Yeah.
Sorry. I just I paid for most of it, but not all of it.
Right.
Like for real. Like I'd honestly say like half was me and half was other people that
contributions.
that want to remain nameless. But like they're my closest friends that for whatever reason they're like, here's some help.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I couldn't just build myself from my bootstraps. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, like sometimes you just need help, and that's okay.
Yes.
I mean, a lot of people do, but
that's like if you look at the origin of just how humans existed, we weren't meant to operate in these hundreds of thousands, million population cities. We were meant to operate in like groups. Villages of 200 to 400.
Yeah.
Where everyone knew everyone, help raise our kids, educate kids, fucking provide for the village, whatever. Like that was life. For like this is such a new thing.
It really is.
And I think about like how everyone criticizes America, and we have our problems. But the fact it's operating this well for this long is kind of shocking.
Well.
It's kind of shocking. Well, the fact that we have we're definitely in a bad period right now. Like we're in a very bad period. But the fact that so you look back at World War II, right? There was a movement up until that point by every metric unheard of. The Third Reich was something that was unimaginable. You're telling me that this was a machine that not only merged together some of the most powerful countries in the world from some of the smallest areas, but they amassed such a force of millions of people that was then able to build up a war effort out of nothing. Because if you look at Germany off of World War One. They were
not doing well.
They should not have existed. They got fronted the bill for everything.
The Paris Treaty that fucked them over? Is that the one after World War One?
It wasn't. I remember that, but it was the treaty. They basically
was it Versailles?
Treaty of Versailles. Thank you. Yes, where they basically got fronted with the bill for the whole thing. So they were impoverished, and so the fact that they came up with what they came up with got people to get on their side, and they were able to simultaneously invade Europe, fight the Russians while killing millions of people inside of their own country and convince all of their citizens that they're doing the right thing. And then the only response to that was the collective world powers to show up and fight them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so then after
psyche is
so then after all of that, we dropped 2 nukes on one of their allies and everything's said and done. The fact that America as a country, like the fact that we decided to not stay isolationist as we were up until that point and decide, hey, you know, we're going to create NATO. We see the Soviet Union. That's going to be an issue later. But for now, let's create this open world trade system. We'll bring in China. That's fine. We'll bring in South Korea. That's fine. All these like countries that were huge, like China's also huge, but South Korea wasn't really a thing. And I think it was, just 30 years beforehand, 24, the Ottoman Empire had just fallen.
Oh yeah.
So it's like, okay, we're gonna bring all these things together.
Yep.
And we're gonna make this world trade system. But the only caveat is, obviously, we gave China a little bit of a get out of jail free card, but it's like we're gonna keep communism out of our doorstep. And the fact that it's worked for this long, like really up until like 2019, right, on a global scale is kind of shocking.
Yeah.
It really is. And yes, we have done some horrible fucking things. We really have. Whether it's the Tuskegee experiments, all of Vietnam, 9/11, like all of these horrible things that we either actively did or allowed to happen.
Or actively do.
Like, or we currently do now, right? It's not good.
Yeah.
However, the fact that this country's still running the way it is, kind of crazy. In my opinion. In my opinion. You know, it's kind of crazy. And so I hear people criticize it. I had a point, I swear. I just lost it. I had a point.
I lose my,
I had
midway
a point.
Through, so you're good.
I hear people criticize it, and I had a fucking
Germany,
point.
Small amount of people
making
big waves.
Yeah, I had a way to bring this up. Maybe it'll come back to me. Who knows? I don't know. We're in a weird spot right now. Mm-hmm. And it's one thing I did want to ask you a little bit earlier when we were talking about your initial coming to America and growing up here. Being originally from Mexico, has there ever been a time where it's like, man, this country's kind of going down. Should I split for a little bit? Has that ever been a thought in your mind?
Often, but not back to Mexico.
Yeah.
Because I also know that it's more in shambles than here.
Yeah.
There's obviously things that I miss, like the people, the food, the culture, the scenery, you know. There's a lot of things that I miss, but I also don't know if I would be emotionally fulfilled leaving everything and going back. Specifically to where I'm from, because it does, I haven't not the word like fraternized with the city, but just, you know, like mingled with my hometown for very long in the past few years, you know, so it would feel
we're disassociated from
weird. Yeah, it would just feel weird to go back and move there. But there's definitely times as someone who's not from here that I feel like I can sort of see the country a little bit less bias, because I know a lot of people who are from here are very patriotic, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Just, you know, still be able to criticize your heroes. That's the way you realize that they're people, and that's the way you realize what you value in other people, and that's the way they realize what other people value in them, you know. And so I think that I would remember being so frustrated, like in middle school and high school, like facing like or interacting with all these different types of people who, if anyone or if I would point something wrong that the U.S. is doing politically or socially or whatever, it'd be like, well, blah, 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 blah. If you don't like it, then go back to that country or blah, 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 blah. And it's like, okay. Well, it was like a whole thing where it'd be like,
what should the weak fucking argument?
It was a dumb argument,
hate that
but
shit.
It was always followed by it was like a history discussion in class, and it was like the U.S. should the U.S. help other countries in general as a world police, blah, 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 blah,
what
blah,
do you
blah.
think?
Well, I think it depends within reason. And I was talking about that, and I was like, I think there are some places where, like, why not help out if we have the resources and they need fucking help, you know, like, why not? And people would say, well, no, there are plenty of problems here. Let's focus on the problems here. And then you point out a problem here, and they're like, well, if you don't like it, leave. So it's like, there are no problems. That was always a dichotomy. So I'm like, I can't point anything out because you're not willing to fix anything, and you're not willing to help outside. So I don't understand how the growth is going to come if people refuse to point out the cracks and seal them over. You know?
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So that was always very frustrating for me. I'm like, okay, you don't want to help elsewhere, and you don't want to fix in here because you like it as it is because it's convenient for your specific existence.
Right, yeah.
But
well, and so that's important because I really believe, and I think COVID exposed this, and if people don't believe this now, I would never call someone truly dumb, but your inability to grasp the obvious is strong. You know, I think everyone, to varying degrees, I think everyone in America is guilty of this. Where there are problems that plague this country there's very many problems. And only some of them affect you. And the way they affect you and the specific ones that affect you are based on your income. And I think everyone has a certain line of income that where they cross it and they're like, okay, most of these problems are usually social. Or it's like, okay, these problems don't really matter to me anymore. They don't bother me. They don't affect me. I'm not really going to complain about it because it's not my issue. It's not affecting me. I make this amount of money, I live in this place, I live in this neighborhood. Exactly. Someone's going to live it. It's like, look, it really, really bothered me when DeSantis got that bus of immigrants or whatever and took them to fucking Martha's Vineyard or whatever. Because, like, okay, at one point do we stop saying, that's a political win, we're owning the liberals? And it's like, dude, these are humans.
Yeah, and then
like, this isn't
performative.
this.
I'm like,
yeah, this isn't like, I get you're using them as such, but like they are not pieces on a chessboard. Like these are humans trying to like find asylum and like have a little empathy. Like I tend to be more of a realist with things, but when I saw that, I don't know why that like.
Because I mean, it's
like hit me a bit, but it's like
you're parading them around. It's like you're with like wild animals, and you're like, I can be friends with these people.
It was a dehumanization.
Yeah,
and I was like, okay, I get the message you're sending, but you're actively shuttling humans up across the country to make a political statement. But the reason I bring this up too is they dropped them off. And then the news went and interviewed people at fucking Martha's Vineyard, these hyper liberal, very rich people that had, it was funny because some of them actually had like history of like donating to fucking like immigration type foundations and stuff like that. It's like, oh, we need to get them housing. And they're like, well, would you be willing to like not have them live in your house? But like, if we built structures around here, would you have them live here? Like, oh, no, not here, elsewhere. Like, I was like, okay, so like you don't want to look at the problem. It's like the homelessness in Albuquerque. Most people just don't want to fucking look at it. Yeah. They don't want to actually fix it. They just don't want to look at it. They just don't want to look at it. Yeah. And I'm not the guy that fixes it.
It's always bothered me so much. Plan, like it doesn't make the problems go away. It doesn't make the issues in society and people and each other go away to ignore them.
Well, it's the equivalent. It's the not to compare homeless people to dog shit, but like it's the equivalent of like if you're a little kid and you have a dog and the dog poops on the ground, but you don't want to pick up the poop because you don't like poop, so you put the poop under the rug.
Terrible comparison.
But your mom's gonna get home. But your mom's gonna get home and see what you did,
right?
And say, "What the fuck did you do that for?"
You could have not.
You could have just not. You could have done any other solution to doing that. But you decided to sweep the problem under the rug. Mm-hmm. That's the comparison I'm trying to make.
I know.
Yeah, that's the comparison I'm trying to make. But like, and that analogy, the mom is the rest of America. Where it's like, we could have done anything else other than that. We really could have.
And then in that same analogy, the child sweeping shit under the rug is the government.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
People are the momming the toddlers running the government because we're the ones getting the repercussion for their very... They make all these decisions, but they live in a completely different world. Yes. And it's so difficult. Well,
so
do you think Biden's allowed to drive?
Fuck no.
Why is he president? How can old people not even drive, but they're running government?
Thank you for bringing that up.
I saw that on a post and it was true. But specifically, I'm like, he can't drive. There's no way.
So I heard about it, and I got to confirm for myself today. Biden, the Democratic Party in general, but Biden in this new election will not be doing debates.
I mean, I don't think he can.
They've barred him from doing debates, and the Democratic National Convention has stopped. Because I'm trying to watch like what's going on right now, and there are Democratic politicians looking to be president. They want to run against Biden. Mm-hmm. First of all, that's next to unheard of. A, B. I was watching an interview. It was with Robert Kennedy Jr. And he was getting interviewed by, do you know who Crystal Ball and Crystal and Sauger from Breaking Points? Mm-mm. They're really good. Crystal Ball is on she's more left-leaning, and then Sauger, he's more right-leaning. But they have a very good rapport, very good show. They're very, like they display, like, where they're coming from. It's very well thought out. And they were interviewing him. They're interviewing Robert Kennedy Jr., who's a Democrat, and he said straight up, like, they're not having debates. Well, they both said it, but they're not having debates. So this is the only real way to do stuff is online. And I think that's fucking bananas.
That's so insane.
Like, did you see Trump's town hall at CNN? Oh my God. Like, there were things there that I didn't agree with? For sure. but this is the sharpest Trump has ever been. I don't know who's been training him. I don't know who's
Probably a lot of people
been coaching him. I don't know, but he had, and it wasn't even like, yeah, he had a couple of one-liners and like zingers, but he had like actual legitimate, like fact-based ansers for criticisms.
like alternative facts or like real facts.
No, like actual facts. Like, and it was insane, but it also wasn't great because this poor lady, I felt bad for her. The lady that was interviewing Trump, I felt really bad for her because it's so obvious that by like halfway through the town hall, she didn't believe what she was saying. Mm-hmm. That it was all things that the CNN bigwigs just like fed to her. And Trump even called it out.
Are you a Fox guy?
I'm a fucking nothing guy.
Okay.
No, I hate them both equally. No, I really do. Like, I hate them both equally. I think they're both very corrupt, and I think they're both propaganda machines.
Yeah, and I mean, when I was in journalism, like our first rule was don't put your own opinion in the pieces ever.
Yeah, that's the whole point. That's all this is now.
Fucking point of journalism.
So Trump, like a third of the way into the conversation, he goes, I forgot, because she kept hammering him about, because it was an hour-long town hall, like 50 minutes. But 40 minutes of this town hall was dedicated to January 6th and him not accepting the election results and calling election fraud. Mm-hmm. And whether or not you think those are huge talking points, if that is all the left has to attack Trump, they're going to lose. Like, you need more than that. Because people don't care anymore.
Yeah.
Like, at large. Like, the hyper, like, I think there's like liberals, and I can have a conversation with liberals. But then there's like hyper leftists, like hyper left. They drink all the Kool-Aid that the fucking Democratic Party has to offer. Those are the people that are so tied up on January 6th and the election fraud accusations. Mm-hmm. The liberals, the moderates, independents, undeclareds, and then obviously the Republicans, they don't give a shit about that. So,
well, I mean, I feel like it's convenient for them to not give a shit about that.
Well, right, but either way, I think you need more of a strategy than just attacking him on these very clickbaity things that most of the population, because I think most of the population exists here in the middle. And so I think most people want more than this clickbaity fucking nonsense. Yeah. But anyway, he was sitting there and he was talking to her. He was like, look, I don't believe you're stupid. I don't believe you're dumb. I know you're smart. We were actually friends a couple years ago. However, I think you've been given these horrible questions to ask me, and that's why this is going this way. And it was a dead silence in the room. Mm-hmm. There's a couple of just dead silences in that room because it's like, this is all nonsense.
Yeah, but was he calling her out or was he just trying to avoid a question?
No, he was being genuine. No, he was being, like, that was one of the very few times, but I'll send it to you.
Because my thing with Trump is, like, I just don't believe he believes what he's saying because, I mean, even in the 90s, dude was big on abortion. He's fucking models and porn stars. You think he's not going to be big on abortion? Yeah. You think these politicians banning abortion aren't going to get their mistresses abortions?
No, of course not.
You know what I mean? So I'm like, it's just like the flippy floppiness of like the stances. And I think genuinely more than anything, he's a showman. He loves attention. And I think he knows, I think he has found the crowd that's going to give it to him the way he wants it. And he has absolutely found stands. Like he has found people who will Trump could murder a child in front of a lot of Trumpists and they will excuse it somehow.
Well, his stance on abortion in that town hall,
celebrities.
His response to abortion was a lot more liberal than I thought it was going to be.
I mean, that is what it used to be.
I thought he was going to say like, yeah, I will like move to make abortion illegal or something like that, the more conservative answer, like the DeSantis answer.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that was also his stance last time. So it's also like is he not going back on a lot of the shit he said last time he ran?
He was just saying he was just saying that he wants to leave it between the doctor and the mother. Mm-hmm. And that it's not the government's job to tell them what to do.
Yeah.
I like that answer. Do I believe him? I don't know, but I like the answer. It's funny you bring up.
Which is funny because that would be technically Trump saying he's pro-choice. So it's like, can Republicans vote a president who's pro-choice?
Exactly. Maybe. I wouldn't say yes, but maybe. It's funny you bring up like the analogy of Trump could kill somebody and be okay with it. Do you watch The Boys at all? Mm-mm. No, it's a great show.
Is it?
It's a superhero show.
Okay.
But it's so fucking good.
Okay.
And the villain of the show, he's like this evil version of Superman.
Nice.
And his name is the
Like
Homeland.
the Venom equivalent.
Kinda. And his name is the Homelander. And so his whole thing is,
Kinda funny.
so imagine if like this, in this world, it's like, imagine if Disney owned the Justice League, right? So like
Like
Superman.
what they've done to Marvel.
Yeah, but in real life, like the Justice League exists.
Okay.
So it's like, so like there's Homelander, but then there's like that version of Batman, Wonder Woman, Aquaman, the Flash. Like they all exist in that world, and there's other superpowered beings in that world. But then this evil corporation, which is very much modeled after Disney, they do all of their PR. They do all of their news conferences, all of the marketing, all the movies, all the merchandise, all that stuff. And the show is so much better than the fucking comics. It's kind of surprising. But they take this character of the Homelander and it's probably, I think it's annoying when any pop culture purposefully takes their villain and models them after a political figure, right or left, and makes it so obvious. You know, lately it's been Trump. You know,
It's like, unless it's Hitler, then it hits every time.
yeah, exactly. Like it just gets boring, right? It's like, okay, I get it. I get it. We hate Trump. I get it. We hate Biden. I get it. Bush is a retard. Like I get it. But this is probably the show that does it the best because it's kind of like soft reminders. And there's a part in the show because the whole I'm about to spoil it a little bit, but the whole part of the show is, to the public, Homelander is great and he's forthright. He has your interest at heart. He's the most superpowered being in the world, but he loves you and da da da. But behind the scenes, he is this horrible human being that's a sexual deviant. He abuses people on his own team. He abuses people. He's just a horrible person. And at the end of the last season, they're leaning more into the Trump stuff, and he's having this Homelander rally because people on the team are starting to turn against him. And he's having a rally, and some guy protests it. And he loses his cool and he fucking lasers him. And that's supposed to be, for the last 3 seasons, it's like, if we know Homelander's bad, he loses his credibility. People are going to hate him. No one cares. Everyone, but he lasers the guy and kills him. And the crowd loses their mind. They're cheering. They're roaring like, yeah, Homelander. And it ends with him smiling. And it cuts to black. And I feel like you're right. Like, that's a lot of the way the right treats Trump. He can do next to anything, and
they'll find an excuse.
Like, they'll find an excuse to justify it. Because I remember, I want to ask you
That's how I feel about religion.
to go
straight up.
Yeah,
people will just find excuses for anything.
So to go back to what we were talking about, what he was saying about Mexicans, because I heard this justification, and I'm sure you did too, where it's like, well, he wasn't talking about all Mexicans. He was talking about MS-13. He was talking about gangsters. He was talking about cartels. What did you think when you hear that back then?
I mean, it genuinely all just sounded like excuses to me. It really didn't sound like, because it was an umbrella statement.
Like,
really.
you feel like you really did, you feel like you really did take offense to stuff like that.
I mean, yeah, because it's, none of my family members are rapists or drug dealers or gang members, and most of our friends aren't and stuff, like the Mexican drug dealers, gangsters I know are not a whole lot. And it's like, we have Bloods, we got Crips, we have all these other gangs in here as well. So, and it goes back into what I was saying, you can't judge people based off of their crimes because the U.S. has no room to speak.
No.
Absolutely not.
Well, and I just asked that because I feel like it's like when that happened, what was the next day? Hillary Clinton and her fucking mob of idiots just ran all the political ads they could about, how racist Trump is, and how you had, I remember this one ad where it was literally, I could not believe what I was watching. It was this dude in his mid-50s Mexican guy, and he was standing in the middle of a field crying, and it had fucking Trump's rhetoric over it. And I'm like, can we not be so on the fucking nose with this?
Can we slightly more subtle?
You know, like, come on. So
but it's like at the end of the day, they're both like using the same group of people to their advantage.
And I just ask you that because responses like that just they get taken to this just upteenth degree like that, and they get exploited. Like the marginalized people get exploited for political gain. And like I tell this to people that are on the left that I talk to. It hasn't happened on this podcast yet, sadly. But I talk to these people and I'm like, these politicians like Kamala Harris especially, that you want to get behind, like AOC or any of these people, and the same thing applies to the right. I really do believe that. But like on the left, since they're so loud about it, about social justice and everyone should be included and everyone is like, we're going to justify everything. Like they don't, even if you are a part of that marginalized group, they don't care about you. Like I promise you they don't care about you.
I feel like
if you didn't make them money as a marginalized group, if you didn't make these big businesses money off of a fucking Pride Month, off of a trans awareness,
changing the logo
off of if they can't change their logo for you, they don't care about you. I fucking guarantee it. I promise you.
I mean, I'm sure you're right. I also just feel like a lot of politicians don't give a fuck about the people they represent.
No.
And I think that also it's more obvious when it comes to people who are historically othered. You know, that they really don't care. Because at the end of the day, it's like Clinton was using it performatively. Trump was being racist performatively, or whatever the thoughts are.
We'll talk about being othered. That was the entirety of the 8 years of the Bush administration.
Yeah.
Weapons of mass destruction, we're going to go get them. And now it's like, what? Oh, okay, there were no weapons of mass destruction. We know that now. We shouldn't have invaded Iraq at all. Oh, and then the Saudis that are our allies, they were the ones that actually orchestrated 9/11. And then we're finding out that 2 of the 4 hijackers were actually CIA plants.
What?
Like, I'm sorry, but yeah.
I mean, it's hard. That's why I'm like, it's hard for me to, I mean, I can't vote, legally I can't vote. I'm not a U.S. citizen yet. I'm a resident. Right. So I get to avoid a lot of political conversations with people. 'Cause sometimes I care about people and I'm like, I don't want to have a political conversation with you. I want to keep caring about you. Let's not do this. I know what you're going to say and I don't want to hear it.
You listen to Leonard Skinner a little bit too much, man. Dude, Freebird's sick, but like, I get. I want to. I do my best, despite how you've seen me a couple times. Probably, I do my best not to get too drunk in public. But I want to just. Because I know it would annoy Leroy. I want to go to one of their shows and stand and like, play Freebird, and
they probably laugh, but do it. Do it.
I
think so. Sometimes I hear people yell, "Do Wonderwall." In their shows.
If I want to piss off Nick, though, I yell, "Play Sunflower." Mm-hmm. I know he will explode. Is
that Sundress?
Sundress. Thank you, Sundress. He will fucking explode because he went off on this podcast about how much he hates Sundress. Love you, buddy.
Funny.
Love you, buddy.
Cracks me up.
Anyway, are there people in your life, whether they're close to you, acquaintances, that you can have political discourse with, or have you found that it's like, ugh?
I mean,
well, okay, let me rephrase that.
Okay.
Political discourse to the point where they're on the opposite side of you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because just talking to an echo chamber is fucking
and
useless.
That's also the huge problem with social media as well, is that it is a huge echo chamber. It's algorithmic. It's machine learning. It's going to learn what posts you fuck with and keep you showing that, and therefore interacting with the same types of people.
And now we know that it actively promotes anger.
Yeah.
And hate.
Yeah.
Actively.
Pretty much. And so I have a few friends that I talk to about politics and just morals and like those types of issues who are very different from me. One of my very good friends is very religious. We've talked a lot about it and we have conversations about it, and it's just always like, they do the whole love the sinner, hate the sin, and I'm going to do the whole love the believer, hate the belief thing, and they don't like it when it hits them, but it's sort of the same thing. I'm like, I love you. I don't love that in your mind. I'm going to hell, but whatever.
It's a good middle ground.
Personally,
I think it's a great middle ground.
Yeah, so I'm like, I love you. I don't, in your mind, I'm going to hell for just shit that I choose to enjoy or stuff I don't have a choice in or whatever. But, I don't know. Sometimes it's hard to have those conversations because then you're just like, maybe they are just being like seeing me differently than what they're expressing if those are their beliefs underneath, and they show them to me in a filtered way. But I think it's super important to try to get a lot of different people's perspectives to sort of get like one rounded out like actual situation. And I've had lots of conversations with men about feminism and misogyny and all those things. I've had a lot of conversations with white people about racism. I've had a lot of friends who hunt, and I love animals, so I'm like, all right, let's talk about it. And just things like that. And like I want to understand, and sometimes it brings you closer, sometimes it kind of leaves you a little bit further apart at the end, but I do value their place in my life because I can always guarantee it's going to be different, and I can always guarantee that we're going to have something to talk about if I bring up certain subjects. But I also know that like my religious friends, for example, I know that there's a lot of memes I can't send them. I know that there's a lot of shit I can't do.
Feel free to send them my way. Feel free. I will laugh at them with you.
They'll be offended or they'll get mad or whatever, but they don't have like problem sending memes that are like directly offensive to me or whatever, So sometimes it just feels like you can't handle it, but you can dish it out in some certain scenarios. But no, I think a lot of the people in my life are very different, and they've had very different upbringings and very different sort of lifestyles. And my type of person is someone who is not afraid to have the difficult conversations, not afraid to be wrong as well, and learn from it. Because I think if I'm wrong about something that I genuinely think is right, like I'm so down to get called out and be like, hi, this is actually incorrect, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Now I can like, no. So like, I don't know, Yoko Ono, for example, don't like her music. I listen to her albums so I could hate from an educated perspective. And that's sort of what I do.
It wasn't enough that you broke up the Beatles, you fuck.
But she didn't. Have you seen Get Back? They were already on the rock. She was
they were.
The scapegoat.
No, they were. No, they were.
But not musically gifted, in my opinion.
I think they're
but
okay.
It's like that kind of thing where I like wanted to listen to the album so I would know what I'm not liking, instead of just being like, fuck Yoko or whatever.
Yeah.
That's also sort of situations that I or like conversations I like to have with people who are different. And there's also people that I know I can't talk to about certain things because they're not talking to listen. They're not talking to have a conversation. They're talking to get their point across.
They want to be right.
That's it. Yeah. So I'm like, I don't need to talk to you if you can't handle a conversation that questions you a little bit. Like I've had I've had conversations with my religious friend about like fate and omnipotence. I was like, if God is omnipotent, then fate is not real. If fate is real, God is not omnipotent. It was like a whole thing. I'm like, if God knows exactly what's going to happen, then you have no free will.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
Fate doesn't exist. Everything's already written down.
Okay.
If you do have free will and whatever you do is truly up to you, then it's not omnipotent because you wouldn't know what you're going to do because it'd be free. Sort of thing, right? So it's like destiny and fate. If destiny is real, then did you have free will? And those sort of situations. And those are the conversations that I enjoy having with her, where she's just like, well, blah, 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 God. And I'll be like, well, blah, 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 whatever.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
It's those kind of situations where that is something I mainly talk to her about is like, okay, if destiny is real, then we don't have free will. Also, if hell wasn't real, do you think people would still be religious? If there wasn't like a love God or go to hell caveat on the whole thing, would people still do it? I don't know. I personally don't think most of them would. I think a lot of people are in religion because they want to avoid going to hell because they think that's true. But if that wasn't a part of it, if it was just genuinely a choice, be religious, go to heaven or don't and find out what else is out there. And it wasn't like a consequence. Yeah. Would that still be as active and alive as it is? Because I mean, the reason, like I was saying, like Mexico has all this Christianity and Catholicism and all this religion is because of colonization, it's because of the fear implemented to drown out the other situations. It's like the other cultures, other beliefs. So it's like if fear wasn't at the very bottom, if the consequence of eternal damnation wasn't underneath the whole, he loves you no matter what, would people still do that? Because if he really did love me, he wouldn't have put me on this earth if he knew I was going straight to hell. Because that's not love. That's just a toxic relationship. Love me or perish. You know? So that was like a conversation that I have with her a lot. And her religious upbringing was very different, where it was just like, God loves you no matter what. And mine was like, God's only going to love you if you get this shit right. You know, so it was also different perspectives, different things. My parents pushed me too far to that side, toward a lot more on this side, and I think she was able to be more grounded in her beliefs, towards just seems more rational than, to me, the people I had it presented from were very irrational. So it didn't seem right. But I think those conversations like feed my soul. You know, I'm like, I need to talk to you about whether you think destiny, fate, free will, all these things, omnipotence, let's go. But I think it's important. Otherwise, you're just hearing the same shit over and over again talk back to you. That's how people group think. It's not good.
So we already went into why you're so curious, why you're questioning, like where that came from. You're extremely well spoken.
Oh, thank you. I think I'm so dumb. That's so nice to hear.
No, you are extremely well spoken, and what you're saying is well thought out. Has that always been a part of you? Was that a product of learning two languages? Do you still speak Spanish?
Yeah, it's my first language. So
okay, so you've kept Spanish.
Yeah, it's the only one I speak with my family.
Okay, so is that a product of being able to maintain two languages? Is that a product of going to school? Is that self-sought? Like,
I think it's a little bit of everything, honestly. And then I also, like, I started learning French later on in life. I think it's becoming like it's almost taking over like Spanish, English, and like Mandarin and Cantonese for the most spoken language in the world. You know, so it's like I gotta know more about French and I gotta learn it and just like connect and whatever. But I guess I've just like I think because I was so isolated and grew up with a very specific group of people, anytime someone was different, I was so like fascinated and just curious. I'm like, okay, what are you doing? You know, like this is that, but like, what are you doing? And I remember just from a very young age, just knowing that my brain works differently. I just knew that I was more so inquisitive in certain ways than other kids. When we came to the U.S., my test scores were pretty high. I got a pretty good education in Mexico, at least, you know, up until coming here. And I was able to make gifted before learning English. But something that really like stuck with me was in my gifted interview. We do like the little puzzles, the IQ test, all the little things, and then she gets to like the personality thing, and I'm chilling with my parents, and it's the lady. She's like, all right, do you ever feel like you have just like thoughts that you just can't talk about with other people because they won't get it? And I was like, girl, every day. Like, I can't relate to any of these kids ever. Like, I want to talk about stupid, hyper specific shit all the time. And so I was just like aware very early on that the way a communicator exists in this world, it was very different to other people, and it did lead me to be very isolated, but I was able to use that time wisely to learn and to research and just know. And I was like, there was a point in my life where I was like determined to learn everything ever, and I just learned way too much and got depressed. So deeply depressed. So just deeply
cursed
depressed.
With knowledge.
Straight up. I had made like a New Year's resolution one year in college, and I was like, all right, I'm gonna watch at least one TED Talk every single day. And that turned into watching pretty much only TED Talks every single day for like a year, and leading to like one of the worst depression spirals of my life, because I just learned so much about everything, and the world's crazy, and so much is so depressing. I at the end of the year, I'm like, how am I gonna get plumbing to Liberia? I don't know. I don't know how I'm gonna do it, but someone has to. No one's doing it. So there's all these things where I just ended up taking all of the world's problems on my shoulders because I was learning about them, and that's like the first step. That's the first thing people can do, is learn about them in order to make a change, and they refuse to. So it feels like someone has to. Someone's got to be a little curious and fucking curse themselves with TED Talks. I don't know.
Why did you stop? We didn't even touch this. Why did you stop podcasting?
Oh.
In a nutshell.
It was draining my soul. The research I wanted to do, I wanted to make sure that I did it properly, and I didn't want to bastardize.
Cannot relate.
I didn't want to bastardize the shit I wanted to do, because I wanted to do something that mattered, you know. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna fucking teach myself how to do this thing. I did all the thing and had it up and whatever, but I wanted to touch on specifically controversial subjects, which is a great career move, isn't it? You know, to just specifically talk about cancel-worthy shit. And I was trying to find my footing or whatever, but I had started this series on pedophilia. And the reason I started that series is because I was listening to another podcast that I really enjoyed, and they were talking about it. And she was like, "Nah, I can't even mention it because otherwise I'm going to get canceled for like even just talking about it, you know?" And I was like, that's just not okay. Like, there's all these deep, dark issues in the underbelly of our society that we're all just ignoring, but they're growing. Like, they're growing like icebergs underneath while we try to pretend they're not there. So I was like, I'm gonna try to do this. And I decided to focus on that one specifically due to like how much crime regarding that sort of crime, I guess.
Well, pedophilia is popping up everywhere in the news now.
You
can't escape it.
It is, and it's common, I guess. I don't know. It's becoming more.
It's like when you
about,
it's
I
like when
think.
you
Or discovered.
like when you move a rock and a bunch of ants just scatter.
Yeah, you're like, oh fuck, that was
it's
there
like
the whole
everywhere.
time.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you just didn't see it. It was there the whole time. You just didn't see it. And so I was like, I want to talk about this because this is a huge fucking problem that needs to just be like solved. And ignoring it and not knowing what's happening, not knowing why this happens, isn't going to help protect kids. It isn't going to help us in the future. And it's like, I've known people who went through terrible things as a kid. I went through some shit as a kid that I didn't love, that I should not have gone through, you know? And so it just felt like somebody had to talk about these issues, because not talking about it didn't mean they weren't happening. And so I was doing deep research into it, and I used the degree for like the first time, and I was like, okay, I actually college taught me how to research and where the scholarly journals are at, where like all the scientific papers are at, all the psychological essays, all of those things. I went to the sources and I did hours and hours and hours of research. I wanted to understand, is it biological, is it psychological, like what's going on? And I learned way too much. I learned so much, and I recorded like one episode on it, and it was super long, and then I recorded another episode on it, and it was also really long, and then I realized halfway through that I wasn't recording for a lot of that, and I was like, I'm gonna kill myself.
That is exactly why I check this shit when I don't have one of my buddies producing. That is why I like, because one time we went for 2 hours and like 20 minutes of no audio, video, but like, no audio, and I wanted to fall over.
Yeah, it's the worst. And so I was just already like just getting like sort of depressed by the stuff I was just like learning about, and just also just research. Just too much of something is just gonna boggle your brain, you know. And it was just like killing me. And I was doing like 4 hours of research every day so I could make sure this shit was right. And I was reading papers, and I had to write it down. I could probably find it on my phone, honestly. There's a man specifically who I forget, I think I blocked his name out of my brain, but he was like an out and proud, open, in jail pedophile, and he wrote a book about it from his perspective, fully unfiltered. It's disgusting, but almost every journal and essay refers to it because it's one of the only unfiltered accounts we can have from that first person perspective, because fucking sane people can't relate, you know? So, and it was that kind of thing, that kind of knowledge, reading those fucking excerpts that really was draining my spirit and it was like hurting me on the inside, where I was like, this is just wrong. Like, this is just so dark. And and I learned a lot, you know. I learned that and a lot of people recall it being they're attracted to children their own age when they're kids, and then they don't grow out of it. And, you know, and so it was just a lot of different ways to learn about it. There's a podcast called This American Life. Have you ever heard it? I have an episode, I think it's called Tarred and Feathered, about this guy who is a pedophile and is a non-offending pedophile who like was super suicidal because of the affliction, you know. And psychologists and scientists have found that it's as much of a choice as straight or gay. Whether, you know, debate that in your mind, whatever you believe, but that's what they have concluded. And so it was interesting because he was like super suicidal, hated the fact that he was like that, and then found a group of other people who were pedophiles and hated themselves for it. And they formed a group to hold each other accountable to not offend. And if they ever like allow anyone in the group to see sketchy or sus, like they will report them. And it's like a sort of support group to keep each other in line. And it's interesting because it's like, you know, there's obviously the thought of like anyone who's a pedophile ever should just be like shot and gunned down and like killed and like get them out, you know. And then there's also like, well, if you were like a 5-year-old and just didn't grow out of liking kids your own age, and you just get older and you're just like
mentally
fuck.
Stunted.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like a lot of things where it's like, is there a therapy? Is there a cure? And that was mostly like what I wanted to do, was like not just bring light to these issues, but like try to move it forward in some sort of way. I'm like, how can we make sure that these people who out of our control are just being born or made or whatever due to trauma or biology, whatever you can debate in your mind, to be this way? What is our social responsibility to our future generations and to the current people alive? Of like, do we fix them? Can we? We can't ship them off to Australia. That already happened, you know, with all the criminals and all that. But we can't. What are we supposed to do? And so that's sort of the direction I wanted to take my podcasting. And I knew it was going to be a huge responsibility if I wanted to do it right. And I was only like 2 or 3 episodes of recording into it when I was just like, I cannot do this. I was also, I think, a full-time student. I had like 2 jobs. I was in a relationship. I was losing my mind. And so it was hard to keep it going. And by the time I got to the end of the research and after that, the recording mishap, I was like, I think I'm just not going to do it. I'm just going to do my homework. This is killing me. I can't. And so that's why I stopped.
That's a super nuanced way of looking at that, because so there's like the rise of the MAPS movement, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm glad that straight out of the gate, the LGBTQIA elemental P plus whatever community, like whatever.
Do it backwards too.
Huh?
You got to do it backwards too. You forgot.
Like whatever, whoever falls into that category, unanimously was like, no.
Yeah, they're like,
that is not
a part of this.
Pedophile and proud is not us. Mm-hmm. And I think that. So I struggle with that too, where I'm like, how do I view these people?
It's such a moral quandary.
It's such an ugly, heinous thing.
Just to talk about it makes people's skin crawl. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
it's like,
and I don't think the public conversation is ready to equate it the way that you have. But I agree with you, where it's like, look, I recognize that there are people that do these things to children out of spite, pain, anger, power, hatred, whatever it is. Just like in the same way, there are people that go out and assault gay and lesbian people and transgender people not because they're attracted to them, but just because they can get aroused enough to do it. And it's out of all these things I just mentioned, right? I recognize that. Like, those people exist. But what about the subsect that are, I really do think it's a form of like in the truest definition of the word, like mental retardation. Like they were mentally stunted. Mm-hmm. Whatever happened, like in that book you were describing, like whatever happened, that growth as a human, it happened in most other places of the body and mind, except for that sequence of things that now leads to this disease. Or whatever you want to call it, this sickness, this fucking whatever.
Yeah.
And again, I don't think the public conversation is ready for that yet.
I agree. That's why I took it down. It's like, I want to get in trouble just for trying to do something okay.
Because if you weren't as well spoken as you are, seriously, like if you weren't as well spoken or as well articulated or well thought out, like the way you construct your sentences, the way you're able to explain yourself in a long format, if you weren't as good as that, you would be bordering on apologetics, or you're sympathizing for pedophiles, which is not acceptable, obviously.
Right.
But the way you explain yourself, you need to be that type of skilled individual to do that.
and
I'm not,
for some reason I thought I could take it, but I'm like, how much of my like,
well, it's a heavy thing to do.
Exactly. It's
and
a
there's
big
more to
thing
life.
to
There's more to
carry,
life. There's more to life than that.
That's how I felt. That's why I struggle with my brain. I'm like, someone's got to do it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, fuck, not everything has to be me.
Yeah. And, I'm not going to say that you should pick that specific subject up again, but if you ever got back into it, you should. I really think you should.
Well, podcasting is very fun.
Yes.
I like to learn and just research and talk about it, because like my degree seems very random when I say it, because I have a double major in French language and history and communication journalism, strategic communications, and that seems very like, why did you study that? But it's like I didn't realize like French history affects so much of the world today, and it's affected so much of just religion. I learned about Catholicism. I learned about all these things separated from Christianity, separated from the church, and like I learned all these things that are very real and present nowadays, and like the roots of it. And then learning strategic communications, I learned the way people strategize speaking to each other. So I feel like I've learned to be like a wallflower mentally everywhere, so that I can like observe it and learn from it, and like know how to exist in the world, and know and understand how other people are existing in their world. And like I said, French is up there to becoming one of the most spoken, it is one of the most spoken languages in the world, but it's up there to becoming the most. So I was like, how did that happen? Colonization, how do you get the language around? You know what I mean? And it's like learning all of these things is just, I just want to understand people, because I have felt so othered for so long and so isolated. I wanted to understand how I can work in this world without wanting to hate the fact that I'm in it. And I wanted to understand how other people and why they work the way they do. And like most of my things have been in order to try to understand human behavior, because I can't. And I have to see the scans, and I have to see the brains, and I have to see the chemistry, and more so than just the psychological theories. Like I have to see mental illness reflected into like some semi-malfunctioning neural pathways for it to make sense to me how things manifest like that. And all of that manifests into the way people interact, and how history has happened, and events, how they affect today, and all that. So I think I've just always been so curious, because I've wanted to know why people are the way they are, because I've always just realized that people were some fucking type of way. And I wasn't sure what, but I wanted to figure it out. And I knew I was some type of fucking way, and I wanted to figure out what that was, so I just want to understand. I just want to get it.
Well, listen, we've been going at this for almost 3 hours.
Oh shit.
Yeah. I think that's a perfect way to end this.
Okay.
Honestly, this has been a fucking blast.
I think I'm gonna get canceled.
This has been let them come. That means I'm doing something.
For you to say, I'm trying to do music here.
That means I'm doing something right, man. Hey, never mind. Never mind. This has been a fucking blast.
I'm glad you had fun. I've had fun. This is not like just regular lunch conversation, so it's nice when I actually have like a chance to shit talk and just word vomit.
Yes. me trust me the fuck too. This is why I try to do this at least once a week. Mm-hmm. And after next week, I'm taking a break for about a month and some change. So I'm not looking forward to that, but it is what it is.
Take it as it comes.
Yeah. But this has been we didn't even get to talk about your fucking music.
I know. I'm like, there's so much we haven't even gotten to talk about that we said we were gonna.
You are welcome back anytime.
I would love to. That'd be so fun.
This has been an absolute fucking pleasure.
It's been so fun for me.
I'm glad to hear that.
Me.
Yes, this is awesome. And thank you everyone for listening and watching. There will be a part 2. Ooh. And we'll see you guys next time.
Confirmed.
Bye everybody. Oh, that was sick. That was oh my God.